All right, everyone, welcome to the r/Curse of Strahd State of the Subreddit live stream. You can probably see the little icons lighting up in the lower left. I'm DragnaCarta, and I'll let Zio take it from here.
Yeah, so welcome to this stream. I am the main mod of our Strahd and the Discord. I've been here from the day one, I suppose. So yeah, you might see me around on the Discord and from the mega threads in the subreddit. And I'm joined here today by two prominent creators in our subreddit, DragnaCarta and Mandy.
All right, sweet. Mandy, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is MandyMod. I got into Curse of Strahd a few years ago and loved the module immediately, but like found things that I just wasn't super happy with. So I was like, I'm gonna fix it and I'm gonna try. And I did that. And I thought I would start posting things online just to, say, hey, this worked for me and see how it kind of affected other people. I expected no more for it to be like a few posts at most, and it turned into a whole like book. So I want to thank all of you for your continued support and for all the fan mail kind of thing that I get, which is still really weird to see, but thanks. And yeah, that's me. Hi, Dragna. I suppose you're up.
Sure, I'll round it off. So hi, everyone. I'm DragnaCarta, or just Dragna. I am the creator of the Curse of Strahd Reloaded series, as well as a moderator on the r/Strahd Discord. I am infamous as being the one who forced Ziopliukas. How that how you pronounce it? Ziopliukas?
Never actually asked. The original pronunciation is Ziopliukas, but no one can pronounce
that. I'll just
stick
with Zio then.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. So I'm the one who originally forced Zio to the meme competition. I get it every second. And funnily enough, before I started doing Curse of Strahd Reloaded, I actually had a series kind of blatantly plagiarized the idea of from Pain Traina's What I Have Learned from Running Curse of Strahd Twice series, which I called Lessons from Running Curse of Strahd, which eventually I kind of slapped together using my own thoughts and theories and ideas based on a bunch of other items I had kindly borrowed from some other content creators. A kind of generalized mishmash of ideas that I thought were vaguely coherent, and I called that Curse of Strahd Reloaded. And so far, it's around 80-ish% done, and hoping to get some more content out coming soon. So, well, it looks like we've officially surpassed 100 viewers, so I guess Zio wins that bet.
Yep.
Cool.
Okay, so just to quickly describe the schedule of today's stream, we will do a quick discussion of the survey that happened, and over 600 people answered. And then we will move on to upcoming subreddit changes and projects, and then we'll move on the Ask Me Anything parts with Dragna and Mandy.
All right, cool. In that case, Zio, do you want to? I guess people are going to start asking questions in chat. So Zio and I are going to be focusing on going through the survey, and while that's happening, Mandy will be taking questions. So you can just put any questions you have, either regarding the topic we're currently discussing, an upcoming topic, or anything you want included in the AMA. And you can just put that in the Twitch chat, and Mandy will scoop it up and make sure it goes into our internal documents so that we can get to answering your question as soon as we get a chance to do so. So with that said, Zio, you want to switch over to the survey and we'll get started?
Sure. So I suppose one of the first questions on the survey was how well the subreddit is managed, and I'm very pleased to see that most of you answered that it's managed very well. And there were some complaints which we're hoping to address today. There were also some questions on how often you visit the subreddit and the Discord server, which, by the way, I encourage everyone to join. The link is either in the panels below or you can see it on screen right now. Let me actually just pull up the stats right now. About half all participants of the survey answered that they use the subreddit at least once a day, which is pretty spectacular. And then there weren't that many people using the Discord server. And even that statistic is kind of skewed because we posted directly to Discord as well. So we have about 13% of the people that are in the subreddit that are also in the Discord, at least numbers-wise. We have about 2.5 thousand in the Discord server and almost 19,000 in the subreddit right now.
Sorry to interrupt, Zio, but I just wanted to check in quick. Do you have the survey data to show on the stream? I'm just not seeing that popping.
Yep, I can work on it right now while you talk.
Excellent, thank you. Great. So let's see. I'm just looking at some questions that people have tossed in. Some of the stuff
is Gunnerside asked us where we might have Strahd appearances besides the village of Barovia or at the feast.
All right, do we want to answer that with the AMA? We can save that for later.
I suppose so, yeah.
Cool. Let me make a section of doc just at the top so that we keep everything organized. All right. It looks like Zio is starting to load things, so I guess that while that actually gets going, we might as well discuss a few minor things while Zio gets the data loaded up. So I guess we can start with that one. So this was already there. Mandy, do you want to answer that question while we're waiting for the data?
Sure. Yeah. Kind of jump-starting the AMA a little bit, but why not, right? We've got an interim. I guess I personally believe that Strahd encounters occur at the behest of whatever the party is. It's more of a campaign by campaign basis, as in if you see a downtime, or perhaps if there's a point in the campaign where you feel your players are sort of stumbling with lack of motivation, or they're not really sure, hey, maybe they don't seem as afraid anymore. it might be a good idea to bring him in and just remind them, hey, here's something to be scared of still. Here's Strahd. He's your big bad. Always make sure to go after him. Off the top of my head, I remember that Vallaki, during like the whole fallout of the Vallaki that usually inevitably happens, Strahd being a distant figure in that is generally accepted. Another, I personally had a brief encounter with him outside of Argynvostholt when I ran my campaign. It was more of a conversation. Hey, this is this castle of this knights, and I totally killed them all, haha. And then he ran off. It was a little bit more dramatic than that, but that was basically the conversation. I don't know. Dragna, do you have any other locations where you think Strahd would be cool to show up?
So I think, obviously there's the book encounters. There's, if you want to have them show up at the Feast of Tantril, that's certainly something you can do if you're not having Ludmilla or one of the brides execute the event. Obviously, at Yester Hill, he can certainly show up. Otherwise, I think for me as a general rule, I try to think about Strahd encounters not as, where would it be a good time, but what does Strahd want to do? I try to view it as a very character-driven process where Strahd has some kind of goal, and he's if he has contact of the players or he's able to keep track of their location, that he is able to determine, how do I get to this location, how do I obtain what I want. So for example, if he thinks that they're a risk and he wants to steal the holy symbol, well, where are they currently camped? Where is their home base? Where are their allies that he can make use of? What are the tools that he can leverage? So it's all about getting in Strahd's head and going from. Also, Zio, I don't know if you attended this, but we can see the Google Doc instead of the data.
Fixed.
There we go. Cool. So yeah, that's generally my philosophy. And wow, a lot of questions flowing. I'll copy paste these over, but while I do that, Zio, do you want to give people, just to reiterate, a little bit of context on what this survey is, where it came from, how we got responses, and what we learned?
Sure. So basically, I had the idea of doing the survey like about a week ago, I suppose, a little more. I figured it would be just fun to see some statistics as well as get some ideas for new projects. However, the response was overwhelming, to say the least. And yeah, since then, we've been kind of thinking about various ideas and feedback we've got. So yeah, about that. So yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So just running through the one that we're looking at right now is, so as Zio said earlier, it seems that people are pretty content with how the subreddit's being managed. There are some room for improvement, and that's part of what we're going to be discussing today. To go over the second question, how often do you visit the subreddit? It seems like a lot of our community is pretty involved. A lot of people visit the subreddit. 39% visit multiple times a week. A good quarter visit, once a day, and another quarter visit multiple times a day. So I presume are, frantically refreshing during bathroom breaks or lunch breaks. And then a very small minority, maybe around, looks like a little over 12%, just barely visit, once a week or so. We have tendency to have a pretty involved and active community, at least insofar as people who took the time to answer the survey. So that's pretty cool. We had 660 responses to the question. So it's nice to know that everyone's pretty active, which lets us do a lot more fun things like events, competitions, and such. We had another question, which was about how often visit the server on Discord. It seems that a big amount of the subreddit, around 60%, does not actively use the server. Around 40% does, although maybe less than 30% uses it regularly. So the Discord server, if you're not familiar, is a forum where a lot of the day-to-day activation of the subreddit goes on. A lot of the mods, Zio is active there. A lot of our content creators are active there. There's a lot of discussion that goes on. If anyone's not in there, there is a link to join the Discord server on the current live stream if you want to take a look at that, and type that in to get connected and linked into the server to participate in those discussions. One thing that Discord does is helps kind of be a pipeline to people to get involved in more in-depth discussions on community elements, additions, parts of the story, getting questions and answers to advice. So if anyone's not involved in the Discord already, we very much encourage you to get involved.
Yeah, it's also very much a place where most of the community engagement happens. So if we get a new idea for an event, let's say, most likely we'll talk about it in the Discord first, and only then people will hear it about it in the subreddit. So if you want to be more involved and have more say about the events in the subreddit, come join.
Cool. So before we get into this next section, which is about community resources that were most helpful, a big apology to lunch break heroes. I totally forgot to include your guides in this question, and I'm sure they would have gotten a lot more responses if we had. So big apologies. He's a good guy. He's very active in the community and done a lot of good resources. So if you haven't, definitely go check him out. My bad for not including him in this question poll. We've reached out. Part of the poll was asking people what community resources have been most useful. 91% of people said that fleshing out was a useful resource to them. So big applause to Mandy over there. Close second was Reloaded in 70%. The Curse of Strahd FAQ at 34%. Curse of Strahd Primer at around 19%. If you're not familiar, that's just a general introduction to running Curse of Strahd. Some general topics and points about that. There was also some information about around 17% of people were involved with the weekly discussions. And
which happened quite a while ago, but yeah.
Yeah, but we're looking at bringing them back. More to discuss on that later. And around just under 30% have read Guild's Bounty's character guides on, for example, running Strahd like an Unholy Terror, running Van Richten, Esmeralda, and so on. Honestly surprised that number's not higher. Their work is exceptional, and I highly encourage anyone to go check their work out if you can. Also, apologies for audio issues. I've reduced my input sensitivity. Hopefully that reduces the cutting in and out.
Awesome. Now, there was also a section on events, and as it is expected, to be honest, since those events have been sparse. Most of you have not participated in any. However, Strahd Must Die Tonight, that was an event that we celebrated our 2-year anniversary with. That was quite well received, as well as the meme competition, which I'm not a fan of, as well.
But you know you love it. You know you love it.
No, it's horrible.
It's fantastic, and you know it. Don't deny it.
It's horrible. And yeah, there were also some questions whether weekly discussions will be coming back, as well as whether there will be more art commissions, since we have done that Yesterhill battle map commission before, and Vargas hates memes, sure. So yeah, we'll talk more about commissions and other events in a bit.
Cool. So there were a bunch of feedback about community events that we will address shortly in some of our discussion of upcoming events and projects. We had some good feedback about potential community events that people would enjoy participating in. A lot of people, almost 50%, said they would be interested in participating in community art map commissions, not just battle maps like Yesterhill. And if you haven't seen the Yesterhill battle map, I highly encourage you to go check those out in the Yesterhill mega thread on the Curse of Strahd subreddit. Not just battle maps, but location artwork, NPC artwork. For example, versions of Fiona Voctor that don't look like she's about to, slit your throat, or pictures of Rosenthorn that don't look like they're about to start, singing to the tune of a terrifyingly creepy, music box or something. So, some more options there. People were also interested in the meme competition, as much as Zio hates that fact. 36% people were interested in community competitions, like the Strahd Must Die Tonight event, where we held a bit of a friendly contest to see how quickly each DM could TPK a party of pre-generated PCs who were attempting to kill Strahd using all of the Troika items, or by contrast, to see how quickly those PCs could kill Strahd. It was a fun event. We had around, I think, between 5 and 7 groups participate, and it was very well received. We're definitely looking at bringing that back, as well as some potential alternate competitions that we'll talk about shortly. And finally, around a quarter of the community, slightly less than others, said that they were interested in more streams and community broadcasts. I think that we'll probably keep this pretty rare, maybe once, twice a year, but we'll see what happens if there's any more interest or any more demand for that. We do have one announcement regarding live streams, which we're going to be talking about a bit later, but we'll get to that soon.
There was also a question regarding the some sponsorships, and I just and we'll talk about them a bit later. I just wanted to reiterate that we have indeed done some sponsorships before. For our 1-year anniversary, we had a giveaway of 2 legendary bundles from D&D Beyond, and for our Strahd Must Die Tonight event, we had partnered with Roll20 to give all DMs a month of subscriptions so that we could use dynamic lighting in our event. So yeah, this is definitely not a new thing. However, I figured it would be good to ask what the community thinks, and we have some plans which we will talk about in a bit.
Yep. Just a quick note addressing 2 questions about Strahd Must Die Tonight. Why Heretic and the original Sani 4 about Strahd Must Die Tonight participants. We didn't really do much with that. I think we tried to reach out to some people, but a lot of people didn't submit. We had a form set up and everything where people could submit information about how their session went. I don't think anyone ever actually used it. So one lesson about these kinds of events going forward, since they're a lot less a lot less easy to work with and a lot more less centralized than stuff like the meme competition, where you just make a single Google form and say have at it. Is we're going to need to make some tweaks to how any prize structures or how exactly these events are administered when it comes to rounding everyone up after everything is all done. There's one person on the Discord server who I won't say their name right now, but they know who they are, who I've been yelling at for the past 3 months to send me the results of their Strava Saturday run, and they keep finding excuses not to. So you know who you are, and I'm still waiting.
Yeah, and regarding stream time, it's 21 past 1 a.m. here. We're just doing it this late to suit our American friends, since both Dragna and Mandy are American.
Yeah. Welcome to international people. I see people in Italy, Germany, presumably lots of people in the US, but welcome to everyone who's currently up way past their bedtime. Happy to have you.
I'm suffering along.
It's okay, we still love you.
Yeah, it's amazing that people actually are staying up. Thanks so much for joining us. It really means a lot.
All right, cool. So with that, I think that brings us to the end of the metrics review. We're going to talk about some events coming up. So just talking about the timeline. Generally speaking, when we talk about events, we mean stuff like community commissions, weekly discussions, competitions like Strava Saturday, the meme competition. And a big limiting factor in these events is the sticky thread in the subreddit. Namely, our subreddit can only ever have 2 pinned threads at the top of the subreddit, meaning they don't ever move at a time. And that's good because it means that everyone can always look at whatever thread is currently pinned. But it's a little bad because it does limit the things that we can post, especially because one of those pinned threads is always going to be a link to directing people to the collection of resources that we've gathered for new people and anyone looking for resources in the subreddit. So generally speaking, we're only going to have one event going at a time if we can, but we would like to have something always available. So one idea that we've come up with and discussed is a kind of a quarterly cycle where every 3 months we kind of repeat this cycle of events. So there's something always going on and there's always something different. So that would start with a month-long event such as a competition like Strava Cider Night or a meme competition, or something we've discussed is potentially a random encounter creation competition or a Strahd encounter competition. Something like that, just so people can, exercise some creativity and come up with some creative content and match it up and just generate some ideas that we can spread around the community. After that month-long event, we would have a 2-week cycle for a commission, probably a battle map, letting people know, again, through the pin thread, hey, we are looking at taking a poll on what battle map you guys want to see. Once people vote on which battle map they want, we would reach out to an artist, gather funding, likely through something like GoFundMe, which we'll discuss in a bit, and just kind of have that put forward just so we can make sure that everyone is aware of what's going on and we can publicly share and post the results after everyone's had a chance to contribute to the funding of the project. We've done this before with the Yester Hill battle map, and it was very successful and very well received. So we want to make sure that we're continuing to sponsor those new products so that people can make use of them where their module might be lacking or might not be expansive as much as some people want. After that, we would have probably a month-long discussion, kind of on the same vein as the monthly discussions. It might be about, AUs or alternate universes, different settings that people have used for Curse of Strahd. It might be about, discussing Strahd encounters. It might be revisiting past discussion threads, such as about, different locations in Barovia, like Brez or Valaki or Castle Ravenloft. Different things like that, and we are open to suggestions on what that discussion should be, but we definitely feel like that's an element we want to retain in one of the pinned threads. And then finally, we would just do another 2-week-long commission, quote-unquote, event, so that instead of doing a battle map this time, we would do something like an artwork of a character or a location or a music or an ambiance piece. So we could sponsor an artist or a musician to put that together for us and come up with the funds and, vote on what people want to see. So open to gauging what people think about how exactly that would work. Let me check the chat real quick to see if there's any questions about that. Let's see. Quick question.
if I may interrupt, just to reiterate on the commissions, there were a lot of people that wanted more commissions, and even since the Yasirhill battle map 1, I've gotten some messages time and time again asking when we'll do another commission, whether I still accept money, and no, I don't. So yeah, we're definitely looking into more commissions.
Yep. Random question from Bobby Lee Saga. Is the meme competition still going on? It is not. It was closed, and I think Strawberry won the Meme Lord of Ravenloft flare on the Discord for their victory on that. So congratulations, and I'm sure we'll have another competition at some point soon. Let's see. Seeing if there are any other questions that I've missed. Doesn't look like it.
There were just some general positive responses to having the competition based off of random battle encounters, as well as commissioning artwork for specific characters. Yeah, I think all of us know that that's kind of sorely lacking, especially for some role-play characters, like you mentioned, Fiona Wachter. So that seems to be a positive outlook coming from the chat thread.
Awesome, happy to hear. And yeah, about the random encounters, we absolutely want to make sure that, I mean, there's only so long that you can have your party, fight wolves. Both campaigns that I've run have said that they're pretty sure that they've committed massive wolf genocide, and there are probably no more wolves left in Barovia at this point. So, yeah, we need more random encounters. So that's definitely something I'm interested in, and glad to see that people are interested. We had another question about the original Sony 4. Can you make sure that whoever you commission remains the same? That's a good point, Zio. Do you think we would make use of neutral party again? Do you think we would shop around? Because I agree that style is important.
We certainly could try to have the same style. There are actually a couple of artists that I know that have very similar styles that you could probably not really tell that they're made by different people. In any case, I think we'll definitely have a survey on the subreddit as to the artist, since the same artist definitely doesn't do battle maps and art. So we'll end up having at least a couple of different artists, but keeping the same one for battle maps, I think it's possible.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it looks like technically speaking, a few people are asking if you could turn up the volume for Mandy a bit, Zio, if you want to do that in Discord. We'll move to the next section. Let's see. Oh, someone's asking if...
Well, I'm not sure if any of it sounds better or not, but I'm working on it.
All right, cool. Well, fingers crossed that works out.
Yeah, should be
Firebad 1111 asked, is there a battle map repository? I think we do have a bunch of battle maps reserved in the mega thread on the subreddit, right, Zio?
There are location-specific ones. So if you go to a location that you need a battle map for, there should be some, especially in the travel and random encounters one. But to be honest, I haven't updated them quite in a while, so some might be missing. Sorry.
Yeah, and if you need battle maps, the Curse of Strahd Discord, again, plugging that, the invite link is on the screen right now.
Or in the panels below.
We have a very, very active maps channel. A lot of people posting battle maps there, requesting them. Highly recommend you check that out. We are looking at curating them at some point so that they're more publicly accessible and organized, but that's something we'll talk about in a bit. The battle maps, original Sony 4, the battle maps will be free. We will not be paywalling any of the content that we commission. Everything that we commission will be publicly available, as it will have been purchased with community funds. Cool. So let's see, next topic. Strahd Sidonite, just real quick, because a lot of people have been interested in this. We talked about sponsorships earlier. In case anyone's not aware, one of the reasons we included sponsorships in the survey was that we actually have had a number of official D&D product sponsorships in the past. Our first meme competition, I think, was actually sponsored by... No, what was sponsored by D&D Beyond? Was that the meme competition or something else?
No, it was just the 1-year anniversary of the subreddit.
Oh.
And meme competition was
right.
a separate thing.
Gotcha. But yes, we have been sponsored by D&D Beyond. We've been in contact with them by email. We were sponsored by Roll20 for Strahd Mastodonite. They provided a temporary free pro accounts complete with a module for us to use. We're looking at doing that potentially with Foundry Virtual Tabletop, which we've had some good discussions with about potential sponsorship options.
Which, by the way, came out today. Yeah.
Nope, they just released their official live version today. So we're going to look into. We're not sure exactly what that'll look like or how receptive they'll be. It might look like maybe a temporary license key that people can use with a pre-installed Curse of Strahd module. We're gonna have to work that out, see exactly what that'll look like, especially with Curse of Strahd stuff, there are proprietary details to be concerned about, and as they are looking to be a legitimate company, we want to make sure that we're doing things by the book. But we do think that there are a number of options available for sponsorship purposes to make these events go by a little more smoothly, and to give people perhaps a little more incentive to participate. Again, we have some other alternative competition ideas. I'm not sure if anyone's actually interested in this, but similar to Strahd Mastodonite, but I don't know, maybe this is just me spitballing entirely. How quickly can you defeat Babali Saga? How quickly can you speedrun the Amber Temple without getting killed by Nephiron? Things like that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be getting a sense of what people are interested in. And as always, if you're interested in contributing to the conversation, a lot of the discussion about these ideas goes on in the Curse of Strahd Discord, where Zio and I are very active. So I would definitely recommend connecting there and coming over and saying hi in case you're ever interested in joining some of these talks behind the scenes.
Yeah, and if you want to make sure that your message doesn't get lost, and if it is in Discord, it probably won't. If it is in the subreddit, it might. So you can always just private message me or message the mods. I'm pretty much the only one who checks the mod messages anyway. But yeah, private messages are the way.
Yeah. So we've already discussed quarterly discussions, just in terms of new topics and old topics we might discuss. But that'll definitely be a thing that we try to bring back, so that people have a forum for discussing, these kinds of ideas on the subreddit that are pinned. For the meme competition, one thing I am going to look at is finding a new platform/voting method for it. I don't know about you guys, but I found that working through an Imgur gallery and a disconnected Google form would be fairly clunky. We're going to take a look at implementing it through like maybe contest mode using a pinned Reddit thread or any other ideas if anyone has them. We're going to start looking at that and piecing together a proper way of organizing the voting as opposed to kind of the ad hoc ways that we've had so far. Regarding community commissions, just to again go down the list, we're looking at commissioning character artwork, location artwork, battle maps, and music and ambiance. I know there are some ambiances that are already available, such as I think Sword Coast Soundscapes, which are available on YouTube, and a few others that have done some Curse of Strahd specific stuff. The Curse of Strahd Discord does also have a music and sounds channel where a lot of people have contributed content that's usable, but we can certainly look into commissioning custom content such as ambiance tracks or soundtrack, instrumental tracks for any specific locations. That was one set of responses we got from the survey that we weren't exactly expecting, but it's definitely something we can look at. Cool. So insofar, so that wraps it up for events. So if you have any questions about, feel free to put those in the chat. Otherwise, we're going to move on to the next topic area. Zio stepped out for a second, so I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah, I'm back
now. Oh, there we go. So next up, community content. We had some recommendations about things that people want to see included in the subreddit, things that they don't feel are, commonly enough represented, or things they would like to see more of. Top of that list, with a lot of people responding in favor, was tactics guides for monsters and NPCs. I presume such as, werewolves, Verhaden, Babali Saga, and of course Strahd himself. I think, I sometimes include some of that stuff in my material, but not in any real depth. Obviously, there's things like the running Strahd like an unholy terror. There's my own how to run Jean Wasabi Strahd tactics post, but they don't really get into like the nitty gritty of combat tactics. So that's definitely something I'm interested in looking at more at myself. Mandy, I don't know if you're looking at that at all.
Yes, I do believe, like in most of my guides, I do try to focus on certain battles that I found that were a bit lacking, or as far as like how to run them or things that you might not think about, because the stat block is very different from trying to think of it in like a sort of cinematic version. But otherwise, like, it kind of runs itself, I guess. And specifically, like Strahd zombies, I never really liked them, but that's another topic. Sorry.
No, yeah, I concur with
hate
that.
Strahd
Free Strahd zombies.
Oh.
Yeah, screw them. This would I actually have a question for chat. Would you be more interested in like streamed NPC guides and then upload it to YouTube, or would you not bother watching it live and then would prefer to just have it on YouTube? Or
Yeah, and I think
written forms? What do you prefer?
Yeah, because I think one distinction is whether people would prefer video content of tactics or whether they would prefer text guides that are posted on the subreddit. I mean, I tend to err toward written, but all right, it seems like most people are favoring written just because text is a little easier. And we have a lot of speedrun suggestions. Speedrun to become like Lycanthrope, speedrun to assassinate Victor, speedrun to fuck up Balaki. A lot of good suggestions. I appreciate all of these.
Personal favorite. I like that. How much can you not watch Balaki burn before the end of the night?
Excellent. Just watch the fire rise. Cool. All right. Text looks to be the favorite. So good thought, Zio, which is definitely helpful. But we can also look into video content. That's something we're curious about. I know Lunch Break Heroes, specializes in video content. Mandy and I tend to prefer text. But hey, if there are any content creators who want to start doing more video, I'm sure that's all within the community is excited to see. Something else. Oh, one thing about tactics and monster tactics guides. If you don't already, I highly recommend as a stopgap the Monsters Know D&D blog. I forget who the author's name is, but he is fantastic. I actually own his book, which is a printed, published version of the blog and expanded with additional material. He does an excellent job of combining the stat blocks of the monsters with their written descriptions and biographies to discuss exactly how they act, how they prefer to act, what actions they'll take, what strategies they'll use. It's extremely helpful, and I highly recommend it. I actually have taken a lot of its principles as I've been reading through it myself to apply to some of my own work-in-progress guides to NPC tactics. I'm currently working through Rahadin, and I hope to have some more tactic guides put together soon. Let's see. Another thing that people were interested in was general tips and tricks for DMing. Now, Mandy, you said you had published a guide about this, right?
Yes, very early on when I first started writing my fleshing out guide. That was back when my version 1s of the initial posts came out. I posted a general tips and tricks guide to, I believe it was the DM's Guild or something. Not DM's Guild. The R D&D group, I believe, is what it was called. But yeah, it was just a series of general tips and tricks. I mean, to summarize. One of the main notes I always feel like is just have confidence in your DMing. Another would definitely be knowing your NPCs over the plot, because characters or player characters will always surprise you. So knowing how your NPCs are going to react to whatever shenanigans they get up to is an essential must for any sort of DM, especially if you're a first-timer DM. But those are two of my biggest advice, is just don't freak out, know your people, your NPCs, and just like don't prepare so much that you go crazy. A lot of D&D is just improving and pretending like you've got it all together behind the screen, even if you don't. So
never let them see you sweat.
Yep, never.
Yep. One thing that I'm interested in doing is that at some point a few weeks back, I posted in the subreddit, someone had posted a comment asking for just ask how everyone prepared their notes for a section, and I got like 20 private messages over Reddit saying, "Hey Dragna, I saw your comment. Please send me your notes." And I was like, I just kept responding to people too, and it was using the new chat as well, which made it even worse. But it seems that session prep notes and look at how other people are doing it as something that's interesting to people. So I think that's something that I certainly might look at. Publishing a guide to how I prep. I use the lazy DM process. If anyone doesn't know, I thought it'd be very helpful, and I think that a demo in how one might apply that to Curse of Strahd, especially in somewhere as complicated as say Valaki or Ravenloft, might go over pretty well. Otherwise, I think someone asked about guides to different magical items and ways of running Strahd. I think it's something that is interesting. Something that I've been tossing around in the back of my head is a guide to the modified Curse of Strahd or modified Strahd stat blocks. I know there's like 5 different CR17 ones. There's like one CR19. There's the one that we do not speak of. So a bunch of different options, and I feel like a master post kind of reviewing them, discussing some of their strengths and weaknesses, and where you might want to use them and how and why might go over well. So other content, some people did ask for compiled and formatted guides, specifically fleshing out and reloaded, just kind of in a place other than Reddit or Google Docs. I know Zio has been looking a lot at putting together something like GM Binder. Do you want to talk about that for a bit?
Sure. So yeah, we had some plans previously at publishing like a compiled version of Reloaded and fleshing out in a like basically D&D type format, and we did a test run with DevHouse. So I'll post a link in chat soon so you can look at it. But yeah, it won't most certainly be done until both Dragna and Mandy finish with their series, because I know at least Dragna is certainly planning to go over and revise the older chapters as well. So yeah, don't expect them soon, but it's certainly something underway.
Gotcha. Someone was just asking for my version of Strahd. I just put the link in chat, but just so you know, it does not have layer actions right now and has some typos. I'm expecting to have a full version released with my Castle Ravenloft guide sometime next month. Cool. So yeah, we are hoping to, like Zio said, we're just hoping to move forward on some compiled guides and resources. I think Mandy was putting together some GM Binder stuff as well, so.
Yes, a long time ago I worked on that. As far as like with the orphanage was my kind of test run, and then I also did a test run of fleshing out as a GM Binder sort of compilation, where it was less of like a copy of the book and more of just like, here's my changes to the notes of it. I think that turned out okay. I just never ended up posting it and never ended up doing more, which is unfortunate. But yeah, I do actually have a trial of that.
Yep. Oh, and a quick note to everyone who's posting questions in chat. We are seeing your questions, and they are being copied over to our internal document. So don't feel like we're ignoring you. We're just going to get to them when we get to the AMA and we wrap up this kind of little presentation here. So feel free to keep putting questions in chat. We are taking note of them, and they will be answered later
on. Yes, and any sort of questions related to the topics being discussed currently, we're trying to catch those as well and bring those up to all of us. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Next point, community content. Curating art, music, and battle maps. This is something we're looking at doing just because there's a lot of content floating around in the Discord right now that has been kind of put there over the past, geez, how long has it been? Like a year and a half? How long has this server been around and like super active? 2 years?
The server has been, yeah, a bit over 2 years.
Yeah, so it's a little bit terrifying. But we're hoping to curate that so that people can more easily access those resources. And we do plan on, putting up mega threads or some kind of wiki compilation of arts and maps, which we'll kind of discuss how we're going to do that shortly. Zio, do you want to talk about some of the general feedback we've received?
About what exactly?
Just the 2 bullet points we've got there.
Which ones? I was answering questions in chat.
Oh, gotcha. So the first one, we got some 1 or 2 people say that there were some low quality or harmful, offensive posts that they saw. Can you just talk about what people should do if they see something like that?
Yeah. So if you do see something like that, because I'm only one mod in the subreddit that receives multiple submissions every day. If you see something like that, report using Reddit's report feature. I work on getting those removed as soon as possible if I see the need to. We will talk about it a little bit later. We're thinking about getting more mods that would help us do stuff, including managing those reports. So if you do see something that is not appropriate, please do report it, because if you don't, it's likely that I won't see it. And then there was also a suggestion, or rather a complaint, I suppose, that other D&D modules aren't as well moderated as this one. And I just wanted to say that one of the mods in the subreddit, though they don't do that much, but they are also a mod in the Tomb of Annihilation subreddit, and they're particularly there so that they could basically get the expertise from us. And if anyone is a mod of another module subreddit, feel free to message us and ask questions, and we'll try to help you.
All right, cool. So that about wraps it up for some of the feedback that we've received, just so that everyone knows what we're working on, and how we're responding to the thoughts and recommendations that people had. So with that, let's move on to some of the upcoming projects and changes that we're looking at implementing the subreddit, just to improve people's experiences and make things go a little more smoothly. So one thing that I'd like to announce now, something that I'm very excited about, is that I will soon be, so some of you may know I've run 2 Curse of Strahd campaigns, about to include my second in the next few weeks. And a few weeks ago, a number of DMs in the Curse of Strahd Discord were having a discussion about a hot take I had, specifically that Curse of Strahd was not meant to be a module for adventurers. Rather, it was a module that took non-adventurers and took them on a journey of self-discovery and maturation that made them and forged them into adventurers through difficult and tragic and challenging experiences. So that spurred a lot of discussion and a lot of people interested in testing that theory out. So with that, I'm proud to announce officially, sometime I believe either in late June or hopefully early mid-July, I will be starting a new campaign played entirely by Curse of Strahd DMs. The players will be announcing shortly. It will be titled Twice Bitten, in which 5 Curse of Strahd DMs who have all previously played and or run and or currently running the module will take part using characters who are certainly not adventurers, are certainly not vampire slayers. But if you are a fan of such popular streams as Critical Role and similar, it's our hope that these characters, while they may not start ready to kill Strahd, that as you watch the stream and as the adventure and story unfolds, that we'll see these characters grow and develop as they explore and investigate Barovia. Something noteworthy is that this Twice Bitten stream, just for people who missed the name, will be run entirely rules as written with 0 changes, aside from some minor tweaks to how the Taroka reading is done. I will not be pre-selecting the Taroka reading. I will not be pre-choosing random encounters. So there's going to be a lot of fun, interesting things. Our goal is to show how you can run entirely rules as written Curse of Strahd, using nothing more than the module and some interesting portrayals or investigations of characters and how they develop when they're in Barovia. So we think that there'll be some surprises, as a lot of the way that the run community has come to run Curse of Strahd and understand Curse of Strahd are not entirely, funnily enough, accurate to the module. For example, there's some interesting things about the timing of when they're supposed to meet Madame Ava that you wouldn't really expect, given by how most DMs tend to run her. So, and we certainly don't think it'll be predictable. We think it'll be enjoyable to watch, and we hope that you'll enjoy meeting the characters and watching their exploration through Barovia as they proceed. So again, the Twice Bitten stream will start hopefully sometime early this summer, either late June or early mid-July, and we'll keep you updated on future news as it becomes available for that stream. All right, cool. Zio, do you want to talk about the new moderators situation?
Yeah, before I do, I just wanted to answer some questions that were popping up in chat. The stream will be, well, the game, I suppose, will be streamed and later uploaded to YouTube. We haven't actually quite decided whether it will be this channel or Dragna's. But in case you want to follow Dragna as well, there's a link down below. But yeah, it will most definitely be streamed and most definitely be announced on Subreddit and Discord, so you probably won't miss it.
All right.
Yep.
How about the moderators?
In a second. So yeah, we're looking for a couple more moderators. We are actually considering to move the mega threads to the subreddit wiki, and are looking for a curator mod that could basically manage all of that, because I certainly don't have the time. And we're also looking for a few other mods that would basically take a look at reports, manage events. We're even looking one for styling with CSS, since there's some legacy code on old Reddit, and the person who coded it originally isn't there anymore. So yeah, look out for mod applications sometime in the future, probably a month or two. And yeah, there will be more information there.
Awesome, yeah, because we definitely could use more help. I mostly just moderate the Discord. I do not have the time for the responsibility of moderating a subreddit. So anyone who's interested in helping out, please feel free to hit me or Zio up. But we will be posting more comprehensive applications and descriptions of what we're looking for in the coming weeks, so stay tuned. Cool. So regarding product sponsorships, just a brief discussion of that. As mentioned, they could provide potential platforms for community events, such as either via Roll20 or Foundry Virtual Tabletop. We are looking into using sponsorships from such things as D&D Beyond, Roll20, Foundry, other platforms as potential rewards for community competitions like the meme competition or Strava Slider Night, if that can be worked out in a feasible manner. There are concerns that we have regarding ethical concerns, such as how we deal with these situations, about how we get into contact with these people, about how transparent the awarding of these, obviously these would be worth some sort of monetary value. Probably likely not a huge amount of monetary value, but monetary value all the same, as well as accountability concerns to ensure that, in the case of, voting competitions, that there is not, rigging taking place, that people aren't using fake accounts to vote for themselves, or in the case of competitive events like Strava Slider Night, that there's no, funny business going on that, is pumping up someone's numbers or something. So we're not going to leap gung-ho into it. It's something we're considering just to potentially spice things up a little bit. But for now, we're probably going to stick with, user flares on Discord and in the subreddit as rewards, and we're going to cautiously dip our toes into the waters of potential sponsorship rewards if and when we're able to guarantee that we can do them ethically, transparently, and accountably.
Yeah.
And one thing that we're looking at too is potentially asking some potential sponsors, perhaps Foundry, D&D Beyond, anything like that, for an affiliate link that we can use to put money toward community commissions. Anyone who purchased or bought a subscription to the software, their funds would entirely go toward a portion of the funds that their purchase would go toward the community. That would in turn be used to subsidize any commissions that we purchase for battle maps or character artwork. Again, we want to make sure we can do this ethically and transparently as possible. We don't want to touch anyone's money in a way that is at all problematic. So we are going to be looking at this, but again, we're going to be dipping our toes in and not doing anything crazy, such that we want to make sure that everyone can trust what we're doing and that we're doing things in a understandable and accountable way.
Yeah, most definitely. We're not looking to make any money. We're only looking to reinvest the funds back into the community just to make life better.
Exactly. So if we were to do an affiliate link or something like that, that is the exclusive destination it would go to. Cool. Zio, do you want to announce your favorite inclusion in this announcement?
About Meme Mondays?
The memes.
The memes, yeah. So there were some complaints which warmed my heart in the survey that there were too many memes, which I agree completely. And in an effort to increase the high effort posts on the subreddit, we will soon be trying out Meme Mondays, meaning that your posts will be restricted. The ones that have memes, at least, they will be restricted to one day. So we basically won't be able to post any memes during other days. However, on Mondays, all memes should be, at least in theory, condensed to one day.
And again, we'll be doing this is just a play test run. I don't expect it to be in place permanently unless it's very well received. We'll probably do a community survey after the fact to see how it was received, just to see, if people thought it made for a better user experience, or if people thought it just, let's say, if it just made, activity drop precipitously, then obviously we don't want to keep it in place for the long term as much as Zio might prefer otherwise. So
Yeah.
it's definitely certainly not going to be, something we're just looking to force down everyone's throats. We're just testing it out.
Yeah, and regarding Discord, all memes in the Discord should belong in the off-topic channel. Thank you very much.
Yep. Cool. So that is interesting, and we'll take a look at that. Just so everyone's aware, I mean, I assume that pretty much everyone watching is not a new user. Most people watching are probably, familiar with the subreddit and have been here for at least a little while. But something I'm looking at updating is our new user experience, so that when people visit the subreddit for the first time or join the Discord for the first time, that they're immediately funneled through a pipeline to resources that can best assist them. This might take the form of putting together an FAQ with some answers to frequent user questions, although obviously we don't want to, over-promote it to the point where it stifles community discussion, especially in the Discord. It might take the place of better organizing community content, either through pinned threads, a subreddit wiki, curating low and high quality content. Potentially something I've discussed with Zio is potentially having someone actively curate and write a guide to the guides as such that we would have in a wiki, so that as soon as someone enters and clicks in the wiki, they can just have a kind of guided, gentle tour through all the resources that are available to them, so that they're not really dropped into, a glossary of 50,000 references to different sort of battle maps and, community mods and resources they have no idea how to use. So we definitely want to make sure that this is very new user friendly and that people can easily find what they're looking for without, scratching frantically and asking around, hey, where do I find information about blocking? When instead we want to be able to make it, we don't want to stifle questions, but we want to make it very easy for someone who is looking for resources to find their resources as soon as they arrive. And part of that does include strengthening the pipeline to the Discord server for those who want it. As like we mentioned, it's a very strong part of the community on a day-to-day basis. We're looking at implementing potential auto moderator bots that can, maybe provide certain resources using channel commands. Zio is looking at potentially implementing an @event or @news role so that we don't have to abuse the @everyone ping every time we do anything.
Yeah.
And, so look at how those work out.
Awesome. Would you guys have any questions that relate to upcoming changes or projects? And if not, we'll move on to the AMA.
This is a quick question here from Firebat1111. How often do people meet on the Discord? Usually the Discord is pretty active. I think we see anywhere from, 50 to a few hundred messages daily. There are dead zones, certainly, usually between 3 a.m. Eastern and 9 a.m. Eastern, it's pretty dead. But otherwise, there's always something going on, I think. Zio, is that your experience?
It's busy whenever I join, and it's most of the time.
Yeah. Cool. In that case, I think that's everything. Do we want to dive into the AMA?
Sure. So I suppose we could start out by just asking one question that has been repeated over and over again, both from chat and from the announcement thread, where people could ask their questions. What's the state with Curse Reloaded and fleshing out? So maybe Dragna, you could start.
Sure. I'll just give a quick update and then I'll pass it to Mandy. Reloaded, my current project is a guide to Castle Ravenloft. I'm around 8 pages into what I'm expecting to be a maybe 80-page document. I'm kind of terrified. I think it's going to be almost as bad as Balaki, if not worse. But hopefully it's going to be a lot more concise and cohesive. It's going to include, guides to navigating Castle Ravenloft, guides to, running Strahd and running all the NPCs, guides to random encounters in the castle, discussions on the history of the castle and how to best utilize it in your campaign, discussions of player visits to the castle, such as the dinner, infiltration to, Grand Theft Auto, Argynvoss's skull, or, rescuing Irina, or things such as that. So hopefully, I'm hoping to make that guide to the castle available sometime mid-June. Again, it's a pretty hefty project, but I'm adding, a few pages each night. So I'm going to do my best to, get that finished. I'm also working on some, as I mentioned, some NPC tactics guides inspired by the Monsters Know blog and book, using their instructions as some inspiration. So I'll probably put that up as a side project at some point. Otherwise, at some point I'd like to get around to Berets. I actually do have, for anyone who uses them, I do have finalized designs for the Swamp Fane and the Forest Fane for the Huntress and the Weaver. For at least my models, I know Mandy uses slightly tweaked ones, and that everyone has their own versions. But I would like to go back at some point and revise my old Bone Grinder chapter so that it has the full Huntress, Forest Fane, trial, and associated boon, as well as to publish a guide to Berets that also includes the Swamp Fane, as well as my discussion of Babali Saga and the conclusion to Irina's arc in my discussions. So I'm hoping to get that up sooner rather than later. Thankfully, Berets, I hope, will be far shorter than Ravenloft. I'd be surprised if it passes 15 pages. So yeah, that's
awesome.
about all I've got in the pipe. Mandy, what about you?
Yeah, so as you guys know, it's been a little while since I've posted for Fleshing Out. Unfortunately, just certain real life things have come to pass and here and there, so I've kind of had to allocate my time appropriately. But I do actually have most of my Gulthias Dungeon Part 2 written, or I suppose it's Part 3 actually at this point. But the last part is all done, except for the battle map, which I'm put on hold a few weeks ago. So I just have to finish that up, and once that's done, Gulthias Part 2 should be up on the subreddit in the next couple weeks, I suppose. Beyond that, most of my Castle Ravenloft guides are actually finished. However, I'm kind of opposed to posting things out of order at this point. I really hoped to finish Fleshing Out with Castle Ravenloft, so that's why I've been holding off on it. Like, okay, Gulthias comes first, and then once that's done, we'll move on to Castle Ravenloft. My own Castle Ravenloft guide, it's coming in about 3 parts. One of which is just the location in general, how to run it, the different changes that I made to each each area in the castle. The second part will be all of the NPCs that I changed. For instance, Leaf Lemprouge, or however you pronounce his name, the poor old man. So like that kind of dude. And the third part is running the entire end boss battle with Strahd himself. Basically how I did that, how I kind of organized it in my head, and how I split things up. And I actually made my own final boss battle with Strahd himself last 4 sessions, and it didn't get boring. It was really cool. It went up and down. It was really great, and I'm hoping to maybe get some of that advice out to you guys in the last part. And with that, unless something else comes up that I'm not foreseeing, that will probably be the end of Fleshing Out Curse of Strahd. That's really crazy, but that is the plan.
It looks like someone in chat is asking about a dinner guide. Do you have any thoughts about whether you're going to work on something like a guide to the dinner, or will that be in your Ravenloft guide?
A guide to the dinner. In my own sort of experience, the dinner in and of itself, I mentioned it a little bit in my Ravenloft guide, I do. But I've always sort of played it and understood the campaign that the dinner is sort of circumstantial. It's almost like throughout the whole campaign, depending on how you're running things, it's possible to run the campaign without actually needing the pre-dinner. And I did that in my own campaign. I somehow, it wasn't even my intention, but as I was running the game, I kind of translated to my players that Strahd was the scariest person in the whole wide world, and that his castle was obviously the end dungeon. Don't go there. We're going to TPK. No. So in character and out of character, they were just like, we're never going to Ravenloft unless we're forced. And I was like, yeah, okay, fine. I'll just let you guys do that. And because of that, like, I kind of had little opportunities here where like it was possible, but they viciously ignored trying to go into Castle Ravenloft, and that was my group. And I didn't want to, stomp on their agency or anything. So I was like, yeah, cool, no problem. So basically what I ended up doing is when they did finally have to go to Castle Ravenloft and confront the big bad, I sort of had the dinner as the preface to that whole encounter of that whole location. So where they sat there and had dinner, it was super awkward, and then they went off to their rooms, and then like the next couple of days, they went off and defeated Strahd. So that was like how I kind of ran that. In summary, for the actual question, so no, I don't plan on having a separate guide to the dinner with Strahd. There should be a piece of it included in the Fleshing Out guides to Castle Ravenloft, but otherwise I'm not separating a whole section for that, just because I do feel like it all is all kind of incorporated into one location. That was a lot.
Cool. But yeah, that was helpful. Awesome.
Yeah. just to say to those people that yes, the stream is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube over the weekend. To those people missing dinner guides in the Discord, as well as in the Stratfon Zarovich and the dinner mega thread, there are a couple of guides that I can really recommend. One is by Andrews, and the other one is by Trusty Peaches, which both expand on the dinner and are quite good quality, so you can rely on those until Dragna's or Mandy's stuff comes out.
Yep. And just to answer some people who made some comments in chat, who need help immediately. They've got these chapters, Ravenloft and similar coming up pretty promptly. The formal guides might not be available, but I'm pretty active in the Curse of Straw Discord, so I'm always happy if you shoot me a PM or if you just at me in one of the channels. I'm always happy to reply with the information I have. And we've got a lot of super helpful people who are always available with resources, guides, tips and tricks, advice. There's a lot of very, very helpful veteran experienced DMs in the Discord. So again, I know we keep plugging it, but it's super, super good if you need help right away, and maybe an official guide isn't available, but some unofficial advice and insight I think are always helpful in lieu of the something more concrete. All right, Zia, what else you got? Lay it on us.
Alrighty. So I suppose you already answered what you were working on right now, and we could probably move on to more member questions. Let's see. Oh God, there's a lot of questions.
Yes, we've been recording all of them.
Yeah.
Let's see. I suppose to get us started. Let's see here. Yeah, you're right. There's a lot of questions.
Yeah. There was a question.
Do we want to start with the announcement first?
Yes.
Or do we want to start
let's
with
do that.
Coming up?
Let's do that. There was a question that I think was repeated in the stream as well. I'm hoping it won't. There was a question whether you have ever run a play-by-post game of Curse of Strahd, and if so, any tips for someone who would like to try and run it by play-by-post?
I have not, unfortunately. I back when I was super young, I think it was it was like 13, I think, maybe. That was my first introduction to D&D. I was in a kind of a pseudo play-by-post community, but I never DM'd it. I was just, a dumb kid who was trying to play, and that community fell apart pretty quickly, so I don't, unfortunately, have too much experience with it. Mandy, anything?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think I have much experience with that at all. I'm sorry, I can't add.
Apologies. And Zio, I think there was one person comment who I think is right, and that we probably won't be able to get to everything. And again, you can always follow up in the Discord, at least with me. I don't know what the best way is for Mandy, but Zio, maybe we can try to, I'm sure you're doing this already, but maybe we can just stick to the most generalizable questions instead of ones that might be a little more specific to someone's campaign.
Sure.
Cool. What do we got next?
I suppose we have some general questions like about where and how would you go about first Strahd encounters and Vasily and stuff like that. I'm not sure whether you want to answer specific campaign questions.
Yeah, I think we could probably, I think, again, for specific campaign questions, I think I would advise people to visit the Curse of Straw Discord. Again, link is on the screen, discord.gg/BDEZFCG. Just type it in right there in their URL bar, and you'll be invited to the server and added on Discord. But yeah, I think if we stick to more generalizable stuff, just so that it's applicable to the most people who are watching right now, I think that might be the best idea.
Okay. Well, here is a question from His Yvain. I'm not sure if that's how that's pronounced, but His Yvain. He's asking, or he or she, I suppose, is asking both you and I, Dragna and Mandy, how do we feel about making Strahd a more redeemable character, changing some of the content in the module and incorporating dynamic character traits from the literature? and not playing him as a villain who had to be defeated as a win condition. Do you have any comments on that first?
I very much oppose this strongly. I don't know how you feel about it. I can see why some people might do it, but I'm not personally a fan.
Yes. I think it's kind of a long train of thought in this, but one of the reasons, like I actually did a long post on Strahd himself and himself as a character. That was a little bit like a couple of little controversial topics in there as well. But how I've seen it is that most of today's culture, we have a sort of idealized version of vampires. But coming from Curse of Strahd is in of himself based off of Dracula, which is the most classic version. And Dracula is not supposed to be a good person. He was supposed to be, even though we romanticize him, we say, oh, they're rich and powerful, and oh, of course they have their reasons. It doesn't undermine the fact that they are in fact a monster. They are still literally have a stat block. They're a monster in real life terms. No matter how bad your life has been, it shouldn't excuse the fact if you've committed murder or done something bad. This is all very controversial, of course, and it's all very real life. But Strahd in and of himself, I've always viewed that no matter how redeemable he might be or not be, that he's done enough that he's become so far gone in his own mindset that it's really hard to make him redeemable. I can agree that bless you. I can agree that some people might want to try to make him more redeemable, but that's never been my playstyle personally. I have held him up consistently as a well-spoken, well-thought-out character that as he communicates with the party might even question themselves, hey, maybe he's redeemable, but then his actions keep coming up where he is quite clearly not and needs to be stopped. And that sort of propels the campaign forward and gives a singular line of a task for the party to do. A lot of campaigns that I have seen, actually been a part of in certain ones, not Curse of Strahd related, where a core like driving force behind a party is what causes that party to demolish itself, to self-destruct. So having that, we need to defeat this guy, is one of the things that really makes this campaign strong, at least in my opinion. Yeah, if you have anything to add to that, go for it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think there was a few months back, maybe as much as a year ago on the Discord server when we had a discussion about this. And my hot take was that I think Curse of Strahd is not, I think Strahd himself is, obviously he's meant to be representative of an abuser. He's meant to be, my hot take was that he represents a lot of issues such as, if viewed through a certain lens, elements of toxic masculinity, elements of self-loathing, elements of just things along those veins that encapsulate who he is as an abuser. He's manipulative, he's gaslighting. Thank you to whoever pointed that out in chat. And I think a big thing about Strahd, and a big thing that you see that might be a bit unhelpful in a lot of contexts, is that there's a lot of discussion, especially in a lot of literature, but sadly too often in real life, is this idea that you can change the abuser. If you're nice enough to them, or you can help them enough, or you can make them feel good, if you can get, bring them to a psychiatrist, you can change them and make them to a better person. And somehow that's the job or the responsibility to be abused. And I think that, again, we're kind of getting to more hot take territory here, so I won't linger too long. But I think that Strahd is turning Strahd into someone who can be redeemed, change the focus from where it should be, which is on the people that he's killed, the towns he's oppressed, and the woman that he's abused and imprisoned and terrorized, and instead makes him the protagonist of his own, sad story. And I think that weakens what Curse of Strahd is about. If anyone's character arc should be focused on, I think it's absolutely Irina's. And that's a big part of what I've tried to include in my guide. And, whether it be, my modification of the Blessed Pool in Kresik and her refusing to be spirited away when she could, stand her ground and fight against Strahd instead. Some of my modifications to Berez, which are coming out soon, which, where if she decides to fight alongside the party and, take an active role, I think that if anything, it's her story, and that needs to be, viewed as a character arc and character development. And I think that focusing on Strahd very much weakens her potential arc, while also shifting us back to this idea of, oh, if you, work in the abuser hard enough, you can change him. When I don't think that's really a discussion that's, very helpful in the frame of Curse of Strahd.
Yes, and in addition, Nerdy Vampire, added to the discussion a little bit by saying you can maybe make him redeemable by saying that his corruption was influenced by Vampire, the dark power. However, I would.
Yeah, it's a vestige. It's a vestige.
Vestige. Yes, I'm sorry. I call him a dark power. I mean, a dark power in mine. I know.
We have a theological dispute.
Yes, we do.
We're gonna schism over this. I'm creating a new church.
Anyway, but like, so it's saying that his vestige or dark power, whatever you want to call it, is what's making him evil. However, the whole point of him coming in contact with the vampire was because he had done something so terrible that vampire took an interest in him. So Strahd's sort of evilness, if you want to call it that, or his personality flaws were so strong that it brought sort of the devil onto his shoulder. So saying that is something that can be make him more redeemable. I'm sorry for the sirens in the background. But I think is a little bit probably not as redeemable in that case.
Cool. So we took a long time on that one, but I think it was a good in-depth question. So yes, I guess we'll try to move them. Yeah, agreed.
I suppose,
what you got next for us?
I suppose a quicker one would be what is your favorite NPC in the module?
Oh my goodness, there's so many. I think
everyone's favorite NPC is Escher, of course.
Oh no, I think
he truly loves welcoming new visitors to the castle.
Oh God.
Blinks is great, I agree.
No, he's good. I think my personal favorite actually is Arabelle. I have a particular weakness for not too young kids, like little babies, but like younger preteen children in campaigns, just because I know preteen children in like the real world, we dismiss them, we put them down a lot. We say that, oh, they're young, they don't think, they're just a kid, but really they're just conniving little, conniving little boobs that like they can't like, they can be so harmful. If an 11-year-old can do so much if they want to. And I kind of ran Arabelle as being this little like conniving, sass-mouthed girl that walked around knowing more than all the adults around her, and yet still being too young and inexperienced to really deal with her emotions. And I find that kind of arc really compelling, which is why I like her so much. But she's one of my personal favorites, I think, in the whole campaign. Little Arabelle. What about you, Dragna?
I appreciate Escher, but he's not actually my favorite. I think my favorite is going to actually a tie to everyone's favorite duo, Erwin and Danica Martikov. I think that they really provide a strong emotional core of the campaign. They provide a home for the players to keep coming back to. They are real people. I've always run them as having souls. They care about the land they live in. They care about the people they work with. They have roots. They have people they care about. They have conflicts. The disputes with, Davian, kind of from Erwin's side, the discomfort that I feel with Vargas or Fiona, and the general vibe that the keepers have as, being secretive but, benevolent, I think is very interesting to me. And of course, they're always super fun to torture and torment and slightly maim if you ever need a lever to hurt your players. But
the cruelty continues. Curse of Strahd.
Oh yeah, I just kidnapped Brahmin Bray Martikov in 2 sessions ago, and it was great. My players hated it.
Oh yeah. I rolled for that in mine. There was a terrible thing that the fires of Valaki that happened in my campaign, and I just rolled to see which of the Martikovs live, and only one of the brothers lived, and it was like a little side mission where the little boy he was like taking the party to go find his brother and see if they could rescue him, and the brother was dead. I felt so bad. That was devastating.
Oh yeah, it hurts. It hurts. I love these characters because I've run them so many times, but it's not you, it's Strahd.
Yep, it's not. It's just the campaign as well. The campaign is so full of dark, unfortunate, just darkness, which is one of the reasons why it makes it so compelling. And we laugh about it, and of course we have to try to find that oh my gosh, that was messed up. Like we have to take that step back and laugh at ourselves. But in of itself, if you wrote this as like an actual novel, this campaign is dark.
Oh yeah.
Really cool. I think that's why a lot of us really are attached to it, besides the vampires and the werewolves, of course.
Yep. All right, Zia, what's next?
All right, so just to reiterate, we will not be answering like campaign-specific questions, especially if it's your campaign-specific. For those questions, go to Discord and ask there. since we just don't have the time. That being said, there was a question, how do you determine when and where to add your own content? Is it based on bad sessions or parts of the module that you don't feel are complete?
So I've actually put some thought into this. I think I've answered this question somewhere in the Discord before, so I'll take a stab at it first. I think for me, it comes from, I guess, 2 or 3 different places. The first thing comes from, where does the module not make sense? So, is there an incongruity in the module where it doesn't quite work out, where, there's nothing else on top of my head, but, here's an example. Why does Strahd not simply take Arena? And one answer to that is that he does. But let's say, you want to play it so that the players have a chance to keep her safe for a while. There's an implication of, okay, so why doesn't he? So you have to justify that. You have to say, maybe he wants to, court her privately like he did with Marina. In that case, well, how does he do that? He's still Strahd. He can't just show up. So then you have to answer, well, he has a disguise. He's just with Vasily. So who is Vasily? How does he introduce himself to the players? How does he get involved with the players? And you just start moving from there, creating new content to fill in these gaps that already exist. The second route is extending things in the campaign with new content that I think is interesting. For example, the Fanes were the first instance of this. I have some mixed feelings on the Fanes, but for the sake of the question, the Fanes were something that existed in earlier editions of D&D. I thought they were interesting, and I wanted a reason to I wasn't satisfied with the fact that Rovia, if the players killed Strahd, that he would come back eventually. So I introduced the Fanes as a way to say, if these are restored, Strahd will never come back, and Barovia is free forever. My players received that very well, and I've kind of tweaked that a little bit over time, but that was how they were first introduced. That was how I introduced Yedrag in my Solinka Pass chapter, because I felt the mountain folk and the forest folk were very underdeveloped. So I thought, hey, what happens if I really do a deep dive into their history and who these people are, these indigenous societies that inhabited Barovia before Strahd arrived and who were visited upon with genocide and are still lingering and existing in these areas. So that was something I was very interested in, and I wanted to extend the lore there. Then finally, the third place is just resolving my own contradictions. Every time, I add new stuff, there's holes that I create, things I need to justify. I just got to fill in those little gaps to make sure that, the house of cards you built with your content can stand. And currently there are a number of gaps, but please don't look at them. And I'm hoping to, resolve them when I revisit some of my earlier chapters when I'm done with the whole thing, so that I can make things a little more coherent. Mandy, what about you?
I would say it actually started back when I first got into Curse of Strahd in general. I was a very, very new player to 5e, to D&D in general. I'd never played before. But I started off by joining a random Roll20 campaign for Curse of Strahd because I thought it sounded cool. Vampires, yay! We only played for like 2 sessions, and then the whole group just disappeared, and that was really sad. But we played a little bit of Death House, and I thought Death House was really interesting. I was like, there's something going on here, and of course we were trying to figure out what was happening, and we never did. So I was so curious that when the campaign fell apart, I was like, you know what? Whatever, I'll look at it myself. So I opened up the doc, I read about Death House, and I was like, this doesn't answer any of the questions that I wanted answered. That this is like a series of events, a series of battles and sad things, but none of it seemed to tell the story that I thought was going on behind it, and it kind of messed me up a little bit. And so I was like, I could probably write this better. And so I added a few things, changed a few things here and there, and all of a sudden it became a cohesive story where there was a tragedy behind it that something could have, been discovered. And that became sort of a rolling theme for me in writing all of the Fleshing Out series, is that, hey, there's all these cool events, there's these awesome locations, these wonderful NPCs, but if we just happen to make a little tie and connect things here and there, everything will start to become connected and more interesting, so that the players themselves, as they discover information, can feel very clever, and feel very like I guess heroic in the sense, because you always feel heroic and cool if you figure out something, even if the DM totally meant for you to discover that thing, the players feel amazing for it. And by adding those little details, I thought it really helped. And then that just sort of expanded on itself and became bigger and bigger. And that's sort of how I went about writing Fleshing Out in the beginning, and onward was just, hey, here's all the ways that this could be done a little bit more in depth with a little bit more ties to each other. Adding in the additions, the Fanes, I did admit in the very beginning, I stole straight from you, and then I took that and ran with it like a loose horse. Yeah, I loved the Fanes, and they became a cornerstone of the campaign for my players, and goodness, I thought it all went really well.
Yep. And yeah, I think we've definitely stolen from each other like 5,000 times at this point. I've
5,000,
lost track of the number of people that I've blatantly plagiarized. I try to attribute everything. I try to include citations when I can.
Yes, always. Same for
There's
me.
just so many good ideas.
Who I found it from. You always put down, hey, as according to this person, here's the link to the guide where I found it, but this is really cool. Do it. Guild's Bounty comes to mind. Their guides, whoever they are, he, she, whatever, their guides on certain characters are great. Gosh, they're so good. All right, I'm good.
Perfect. All right, Zio, what you got next?
Awesome. So a question that Mandy actually partially answered already would be how you two got into Curse of Strahd.
So I guess Mandy answered that. Is there anything you want to add to your response?
Oh, not much. That was it. Yeah, I joined a game. It fell apart, and I was like, "This is too interesting. My little brain needs to have closure." And so I ended up reading it, and then read the whole freaking book, and then looked at the whole book again, and put sticky notes in it, and got going. But that's how I got into it. Yeah.
I think I got into Curse of Strahd. God, was it 2017? I want to say maybe 2016. I forget exactly when. I had the book. I received it as a present for I think Christmas, maybe a birthday. It was an adventure I was interested in. I think I'd followed it briefly on Dice Camera Action with Chris Perkins. I haven't watched the full thing, but I was intrigued by the Gothic horror setting. I've always enjoyed Innistrad, the Magic the Gathering setting, so I really enjoyed the take on that particular D&D idea. I started running my own campaign with some friends from. My first campaign actually didn't start immediately. I had a kind of get together with some friends from college in our final year before we graduated. I ran a quick one-shot, just an improvised adventure where they had to like hunt down a Wendigo or something. I think I had just watched an Until Dawn playthrough. We didn't finish it, but we decided that we had a lot of fun and wanted to keep playing together. Maybe not that one shot, but I said, hey, I got this book for Christmas last year. It's Curse of Strahd. It's pretty spooky. Do you want to play it? And they said, sure. That sounds like a good idea. Most of them are new players. It was interesting. They certainly did not get a standard introduction to D&D, but we had a blast. I started playing my second campaign, I think a year and a half later. And it's just been a lot of fun. And I just love the module because I've always been very into creative writing. And Curse of Strahd, unlike a lot of adventures I've run into, is just, it's based around character rather than, plot. So the story itself might be ostensibly, get these Taroka items and, kill the vampire on the hill. But, that's not what Curse of Strahd is about. Curse of Strahd is about Irina's struggle to escape the shadow of her abuser and her efforts to become her own person. It's about Erwin and Danica Martikov's efforts to free the land that they love and create a better future for, their home and their children. It's about the abbot finding ways to escape his corruption and seeing if the players can redeem him from the place he's fallen. It's about the players becoming people that are worthy of overthrowing the vampire and, restoring the sunlight to the land. It's a story about people, and I think that's what I find most fascinating about is that by shifting from a linear adventure story to a sandbox, that lets you focus on a very character-driven story, which is, I think, what drew me in the first place, and certainly what's kept me around.
Yeah. Yeah. So we ended up really loving it, and now we're here. And now we're having an AMA. That's pretty crazy, actually.
Yep. Yeah, right. I guess we can never leave Barovia.
I guess.
Yeah. Now, to quickly answer one question in chat, you can definitely ask questions via DMs on Discord. However, they probably won't be answered right now since we're streaming. But you definitely can. Now, another question that was quite good, I think, was if you could ask Chris Perkins one thing, why he made a particular choice in the book, what would it be?
Man, that's a question. There's a lot of questions I'd like to ask Chris Perkins.
I guess it would be less for Chris, because Chris Perkins, I actually have watched Dice Camera Action. I stole a few ideas from that stream on Curse of Strahd. I didn't watch anything after Curse of Strahd, but I did watch their whole season of it, or whatever you call that. So I'm not really sure about Chris Perkins as a person. I don't want to, say anything because I actually don't know, and I don't. But one of the things that's bothered me, I suppose, the most about the book is the treatment of the Vistani. My post on Sarah Poole and the Vistani in general, I talked about it a lot, how I'm going to rave about the Vistani, and here's all the things that I changed to make them like, more humanizing and like a culture instead of a bunch of Strahd spies. I think their treatment like bothered me a lot for some reason. I don't know why, but it did. It got to me. And that was one of the things that I tackled very, very early on in my fleshing out guide. So if I were to ask, like, hey, what was the idea behind this? Like, did you guys think that there was something more about the Vistani? Did it come from anywhere? Or like, knowing, I guess, the thought process behind I think the poor treatment of them, to be perfectly blunt about it. But I guess that would be my my question, I guess, for the design group on Curse of Strahd.
You're here on that. I'll second that.
Okay.
I guess if I had a question of Perkins, I mean, obviously there are a lot of like small things. I mean, there's some unknowns in the module, like the third gem people keep incessantly asking about, which I keep saying, please don't turn it into Dracula Lich. But I think if I had to ask Perkins a question, it would be, what was your design intent when making Curse of Strahd? What did you envision it being thematically and atmospherically and narratively? Because again, my hot take about whether Curse of Strahd is meant to be played by adventurers or non-adventurers. Is Curse of Strahd a story about killing the vampire? Is it a story about becoming the person who can kill the vampire? Because if you look at the way the module is written, a lot of the things that don't quite work, such as the running into the witches or the hags in the Bone Grinder, encountering the vampire spawn in Vallaki Coffin Maker Shop, a lot of potential TPK situations play very harshly against the standard hack and slash, war adventurers, metagaming, D&D player mindset. Even those who aren't, munchkins or something, the standard D&D approach, I feel, can be very harmful to the Curse of Strahd experience and very dangerous, which is a lot of the reason why people, come forth saying, hey, my party's TPK'd, what do I do? I think that I'd be curious to know why the module is kind of left so open-ended, and I'm sure that I'll know part of the answer is probably because he wanted it to be open-ended, depending on how people wanted to run it. But a lot of DMs, I feel, aren't entirely sure of how they want to approach the material, and either run it rules as written or maybe don't entirely understand how they're implementing it or making changes. Because it's a pretty big module, and I think beyond that, just tonally it can be a bit over the place. On the one page you've got children being cannibalized, and another you have green-skinned witches riding broomsticks. So I think that, again, I think some humor is important in a dark setting, but I'm curious to know like how they found that balance between dark gothic horror, mature themes, and gothic camp, which I feel is pretty prevalent. Between the Barovian witches and the goddamn player killing broom and death house and things of that nature. So that's it's kind of long-winded, but that's what I'd like to talk to Perkins about if I had the chance.
Okay, so we also had another question related to Chris Perkins, which probably I'll answer. The question was whether there is any chance Perkins could feature in a Twice Bitten stream. So like apart from Dragna letting him, which I'm sure he would, but we've actually tried to contact Chris Perkins before for like an AMA for a subreddit anniversary. However, he doesn't really have a public email that you can contact him with, and Twitter isn't really the best. So we've had no luck. But if anyone knows him and can reach out, I'm sure we would be more than happy to.
Absolutely. I'm certainly hoping to use guest characters occasionally on the stream. And hell, if we could get Perkins, that'd be fantastic. But I think it'd be pretty difficult. He doesn't seem to be exceptionally accessible. But we can certainly try.
Yep. Okay. There was also one question that I saw that was asked in the Discord today, as well as in chat. How do you all feel about making Strahd a woman?
I guess I'll go first on this one. I really don't, I suppose, care. I personally, choose to see him, keep him as a guy in my campaigns. I don't know why. It feels like his character is kind of complete there. But as long as you change things just appropriately enough, switching genders doesn't seem to do as much. If anything, you can kind of have that as a little bit as I suppose, like, hey, guess what? Women are just as evil. They can be just as gaslighty and just as cruel. As long as you're changing them to a woman isn't sort of like a statement of, oh, now I'm going to make them redeemable because inherent femininity is like a good thing and therefore women are better than men for some reason. Like that's not equal. That's not cool. So really, and I suppose like gender shouldn't matter as much. If it does, then maybe it's not the best way to go about it. That was very vague there at the end, but I think that's kind of a point. Dragna, you have any thoughts of those?
No, I'd say about the same as yours. I think if people want to do it, then I think that's fine. I think you know, if the thematic and ethical implications of the module are something you care about, I think you definitely want to look at how you're approaching that and how the dynamic might change. But as you said, obviously, abuse happens in every relationship. As long as you're attentive to, how you're modifying the story and you're taking appropriate action to make sure that it tells the story you want to tell, I think, hey, go for it.
Yes, exactly. The character shouldn't change based on gender very much. Of course, certain aspects will, but that's just basically to each DM their own.
Okay. There was a question: at which age did you start DMing? Which should probably be a quick one.
Oh, I don't remember how old I was. It was like half a year before. No, less than that, like 4 months before I started writing Fleshing Out. I was very, very new. I started looking into D&D when I was like 22 or something. It was like the last year of college, I think. Yeah, I'm actually very new to D&D in general, to all sorts of gaming systems, which is, I know, surprising to some, but like I just never got into it. I was an only child, never had the chance to play with other people. And then I was like, hey, I'm an adult and I can be a nerd now. And then I discovered D&D and never looked back.
Made a hell of a splash, though.
Well, thanks. What about you? How old were you?
I was definitely a bit younger. I think I mentioned that I started playing like on an online message board, I think around age 13 or 14. Man, I can't remember what it was called. But I remember like we played on Map Tool, if anyone remembers Map Tool. I think I started DMing around age 14. I dropped it for a while. I played some other systems. I think I played around with Pathfinder for a bit, very, very shortly. I think we had like 2 sessions. I think there was one, I think we played Traveler for like 3 sessions. Then I put it off for a little while. Then I started playing with some high school friends. We played the Dresden Files RPG for like 3 sessions. Again, you're seeing a bit of lack of commitment here. Picked it back up again in college with 4th edition. I'd been playing 4th edition previously when I was around 14, because that was around when it was operating. But played it with some college friends that went on for a little bit longer, both my campaign and my friend's campaign, and then just kind of dropped it till I was getting together with some friends, and we picked up Curse of Strahd and we took it off from there. But I've also run a few homebrew 5e campaigns before I did Curse of Strahd. So I guess I've been playing, man, for a while now. Maybe like playing for like maybe 13, 14 years, DMing for maybe 12, 11. I don't forget how old I am. Oh well.
Yeah. I started with 5e. I think I started about the same time as Stormgate's Thunder came out. All right. There was also a question about your favorite ally. I suppose that's kind of similar to your characters, but
my vote definitely goes to Esmeralda. She's fantastic.
My vote is not a particular person. I've always run it that you should kind of get an idea of your party by the time that they get to the Ziopliukas reading. That knowing where your party's weaknesses is should try to like help propel them. If they suck in battle, like you happen to get a nice little foursome of wizards and warlocks and they have no strength, then maybe going for Esmeralda or Van Richten, someone who can actually pack a punch in battle, would be great. If you need a moral center, a child like Arabella is always good. If you need someone for laughs, there's I guess Piddlewick is always a good for like weird, morbid humor. He was a favorite in my group particularly. I think that the ally needs to depend on the group. Very specifically, that no specific ally can actually help the campaign more than another. But they can, an ally can help your specific group better than others can. And that's going to be kind of at your discretion as the DM.
Okay, thanks for the answers. There was a question, how do you organize your notes and how do you prepare for your sessions?
Wow. Early days, I would write forever. I would write pages of like if then what's, and I would just drive myself crazy with preparation. Since then, I've become much more comfortable in it. Now I just like I know the NPCs, I know what might happen, and then I say, okay, no matter what they do, I probably have a result for it. I currently am actually running my own homebrew campaign now since finishing Curse of Strahd. It's with the same group that I ran it for, plus a couple extras. And so they're now in my homebrew world and they're going at it. And I'm kind of running it a little bit more sandboxy. And so far it's going quite well. But I mostly just say, hey, here's my bullet point list of things that could do. Here's my pictures of the NPCs that might be relevant, and done. And then we just see how it goes and make sure that all my roles are hidden, just because in case I need to like really fudge something really quickly, then maybe I have to figure that out. But yeah, it's all to make their play more enjoyable in the end.
Cool. I've been through like 50 different methods of organizing notes. If you think of it, I've been there probably. I've experimented with homebrewery, OneNote. I did Google Docs on and off. I'm currently back in Google Docs. I tried, putting notes in Roll20 briefly. That really did not work out well. Right now, my current approach is I use the lazy DMing approach coined by Sly Flourish, where you kind of, instead of thinking about plots or stories or what's going to happen and trying to predict what your players will do, you focus on who are my PCs and what do they want, what are the characters they might encounter, what locations might they visit, what are some secrets that they might learn or some treasures they might find, what are some encounters they might find, what are some cool scenes that I think could happen. And the nice thing about leaving it very flexible is that you can move these things around. Like maybe you intended Erwin Mardica to share with them the secret of Babali Saga and the fact that she's a dangerous witch in Berez, but maybe they don't go to the Blue Water Inn, and maybe you can have Victor drop it in conversation with it at dinner with the Baron or something. You never know. So it's leaving things very open-ended, and while it can be a little hard to grapple with at first for someone who's not used to improvising, it makes it a lot easier to improvise because you have all the tools you need, and you just need to get a little more used to kind of flexibly building, whatever your session is, because you already have all the resources laid out in front of you. It's very similar to pre-prepping a recipe. You pre-measure all your ingredients, you set them out on the counter, and you just kind of put them in little by little. And I found this basic Google document very helpful for doing that.
Cool. There was a question whether you play IRL or use other platforms.
Roll20 for me. It's very difficult to find real life people that you can play with and meet with. That I know has been made even more difficult most recently due to COVID. Stay healthy to anyone who might have been affected by it. But yeah, I've always just played on Roll20. I found that voice, I love the dynamic lighting situation. I love preparing that and seeing the players kind of stumble through a battle map. I do. I really enjoy Roll20, actually. I know it's not the best out there, but I've taken everything I can get from it.
Nice. I've played IRL a bit. I haven't DM'd IRL since college, I think. Although I've run like a scattered one-shot for friends here and there. Curse of Strahd I've run exclusively through online media, largely through Roll20 over the past 2.5 years or so, but I've recently switched over to Foundry Virtual Tabletop, which just released its full version today, and I found it to be a very, very helpful campaign tabletop tool. So I run exclusively on Foundry at this point.
I suppose I could also talk about my experience. I run almost exclusively IRL. I run like 2 campaigns that never finished IRL with different groups, and now I have one Curse campaign that's still going on. We just play very rarely, but we've done one session on Roll20 right now due to the lockdown. However, I absolutely hate Roll20, and I suggest Foundry VTT. Awesome. There was also one question whether you, Dragna, or Mandy have ever considered Patreon or taking donations for your work.
I've actually been asked this question before in some DMs and whatnot. I feels kind of uncomfortable because I know that our work is a conglomeration of ideas from other people as well. While I appreciate support and everything, very, very, very much so, I always do. It always feels a little bit awkward, like, at least for me, to put something up. I do have the orphanage on the DMs Guild. I suppose that's one sort of way if you really wanted to, but I would never put anything that I create will never go under a paywall, ever. Like, I'm very much saying that that if I'm going to create something that I have a lot of fun with, I want to share that fun with other people. And oh god, my cat's yelling in my ear. I'm sorry, guys. I know he came up behind me, just meowed like in my ear. I'm like, oh god, a cat, no. Anyway, yes. So basically, anything that I create with the intent of I want other people to hopefully enjoy it as much as I do. So, it will never go over under a paywall, and the fact that you guys even like it enough to even say something means a lot to me, and I really appreciate all the support. It does wonders. Thank you.
Definitely. And honestly, I'm kind of in a similar boat. I definitely never want to put anything behind paywall. Especially, as you mentioned, it is largely in many places inspired by the work of people who've come before us, or who keep contributing content and revising it and updating it. And I think beyond that, just like, if I were to do something like that, it would have to, like, I'm too much of a lawful good person IRL not to, file it with my taxes. And I don't want to do that, man. That's too painful. So I think I would probably avoid Patreon or, coffee or, other tip jar materials, just because I love you all and I deeply appreciate all the support, but truth be told, I just can't be asked to deal with paperwork.
Okay. There was one question, what's your opinion on Puffin Forest videos? I know I personally don't watch them at all, but I think they're doing some Curse related content. If you have checked it out, what's your opinion?
Sorry, I missed that. Would you say which content?
Puffin Forest. It's apparently a YouTube channel.
I don't think I have.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not familiar with that either.
Oh, it's this person, the one with like the little cartoon characters. I've seen like 1 or 2 episodes.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, I've heard of them. Yes, you're right. Never mind. Well, I haven't seen the Curse of Strahd content for them, but I have heard of that. Yes.
Yep.
Awesome. There was a question whether there's any chance of making similar communities to other modules, specifically Wildmount. And we kind of touched on it before. Currently, no plans, but if anyone wants to ask us how we're doing, you're more than welcome to. There was one specific question for Mandy, but I suppose Dragon also did it, so you could answer. How did the fight go with the Felix Demon? It's kind of a specific question, but I suppose we can answer it.
Oh, this is going to sound really absurd, but I actually didn't get the chance to run the orphanage in my game. I wrote it. I know I wrote it after they finished Vallaki because I thought that Vallaki, my actual experience with Vallaki and my players went very, very poorly. It was a cluster F, and they all died inside I think they all lost a little piece of their souls that day. And I was like, I need to fix this because it went so badly. And it was at Vallaki was actually when I started writing Curse of Strahd, the Fleshing Out series. So I'd actually hadn't even started revising it personally until much later in my own game. So I was like, how can I fix this? And then I wrote a whole bunch of extra stuff, and I was like, this would be so much better. And then like halfway through my Vallaki area, I kind of ended up fixing things. And my group had a return to Vallaki, which went 100 times better. Because I had taken some time to fix some things, but they never actually got to the orphanage. So I can't attest to it, which is really embarrassing to say, but I'm glad you guys like it, and it's gone really well for other people.
Honestly, I'm kind of in a very similar position. Like, Curse of Strahd Reloaded was basically all of my thoughts on, how would I change the first campaign that I ran? And I started writing it, I think, when I was about a third of the way through running my first campaign. I think I just finished Vallaki or something, similar to you. And again, most of the changes, 99% of the changes that I'd made in Reloaded never showed up in my first campaign. They were just the inspiration for like, okay, I didn't like this. What would I change if I were to do this again? So my second campaign is literally just the playtest guinea pigs for all of my Reloaded material. So,
amen. Yeah, a lot of yep, amen. Like a lot of fleshing out for me was I did actually end up as things caught up with it, I ended up writing it before the campaign or before I was able to do it, but none of it was ever play tested until my players got to it. At which point there are certain of my posts that I do remember going back to and editing certain things because I was like, this didn't go well. Let me just delete this paragraph and hopefully no one will notice. But yes, that I have done some post editing after play testing with players, but certain things, no, I'd already run it. I ran the campaign once with my little group now, and now we're on to our homebrew one. I do plan on running Curse of Strahd again in the future. Not soon, but definitely in the future. And when I do, I'll have an actual true play test of everything. But until then, yeah, it's a little iffy, those beginning posts. Cough, cough.
Yep. I definitely got to go back and make some revisions. All right, Zio, what you got next?
There was a question on Thanes, since there's a lot of differences between different takes between different people. There was a question whether all of them will be consolidated at some point, which I highly doubt.
I mean, there was someone who posed this earlier who was like, hey, I'm going to take the best stuff from Dragna and Mandy's guides and add it to a third guide. And I posted that one XCCD Combat Standards where, hey, there are 14 competing standards. We should make a new standard that encompasses all of these standards. Conclusion, there are now 15 competing standards. So I think that a lot of our Thanes content has diverged just because we have different visions of what they're meant to be, which is perfectly fine. And like you see new people coming in every day with their own ideas for what they should be. So
yes, like every time that I've posted about the Thanes in my guides anywhere, I've always posted, hey, this is my take on it. I really enjoyed it. My players really enjoyed it. Put a period on that sentence, done. So it's always free for other people to take and change into what they like. After all, it certainly didn't start with me. It didn't start with Dragna. It was way back in old, what was it, 2E, I think, or something, when they were introduced, and then forgotten about in the recent one. So the best I think we can do, I think there's like the mega thread that's like the compilation of things and whatnot, but that's pretty much sort of the best that we can hope for. If another party comes along in the future and consolidates all of our ideas again, then I guess good for you. Warning, it's a lot of work. We've written, I think, Dragna, you've written like 800 pages. I've written like 300 or something in my guides. I have no idea. It takes time.
Jesus, I don't even want to think about it. I still have 80 pages of Ravenloft I need to write. Don't remind me.
I know. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to poke it. I poked the bear. Yeah, it does. It takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. It's really enjoyable. Otherwise, I'm guessing neither of us would do it. But yeah, if you ever want to try to consolidate it, go ahead. I just have to warn you, it is time. Yeah, it's good. It's good stuff. But for the Thanes themselves, it's just what kind of story do you want to tell in your game? That might just go down to personal preference. If you've seen movies about witches and nature witches and whatnot, and you thought that this one was cooler than this one, then maybe try to take that approach because you're automatically more interested into it in that view. So yeah, it's gonna just vary from DM to DM. I really do think.
Okay. We had a couple of subreddit related questions which I'll answer. One was about basically making a prompt / character line guide for Strahd and Rahadin. I just want to point people to the community NPC dialogue options thread that's in the NPC mega thread, and it's also pinned in the Discord channel. And it has community-made dialogue lines for a lot of the NPCs. It's of course not finished, nor ever will be, but yeah, you should consult there. There's also one question about how do you handle the musket in the catacombs of the Castle Ravenloft?
I feel like I'm leading most of these questions, if that's okay, or like starting. If you want to start this one,
Totally cool.
Okay. Well, I guess for me, this will come in my Castle Ravenloft guide. So I did write a section on it, but I actually ended up changing a lot of the catacomb section just because I thought it was too busy, too involved, and I don't know any party that's so intent on discovering things that they're going to go and open like 50 different caskets one at a time and deal with whatever mess is in there. Yeah, excuse me. I thought it was just a bit much and just a bit scattered, and especially killed me with like Sir Klutz. I think is one of the silliest things in the whole book, especially since the characters themselves, the players, are going to be in the catacombs, presumably at the end of the campaign when everything is most dramatic, and things like Sir Klutz and other like jump scares are just really like they take off the tension. They don't work as well in the end of the game, in my personal opinion. So I ended up changing the crypts entirely. I made them a catacomb of consorts, basically, where Strahd, he finds a consort that he's interested in, marries them or does whatever, and turns them into a vampire, eventually gets bored of them and traps them into a catacomb. So that no matter what, every catacomb has like either a corpse or a vampire in it of his past lovers and interests. So I just got rid of literally all the other weird side characters that you only see for 2 sentences at most in the book at a time. And considering that my players only opened like 2 tombs in general, I thought that worked a lot better. Yeah, so that was my take on it. The musket becomes a non-issue. Other things become a non-issue, like the flying machine, for instance. It just seemed like it was just too overwhelming, especially for players that were worried about dying to the vampire lord. But that was my take on it.
Yeah, I pretty much, by contrast, tend to run the catacombs kind of basically as written. I'll probably make a few tweaks, but honestly, I don't think I'll change much. Most of my Castle Ravenloft guide is going to be about tactics, how to implement the atmosphere, how to run Strahd, how to run the NPCs, how to make the best use of things like the brides and random encounters. So I probably won't change too much of what's there as written, as opposed to some of my other chapters, like the Emperor Temple or Solinka Pass. A lot of the stuff in my Ravenloft guide will be rules as written, but it'll be more of an interpretation. In the case of the musket, I think it's pretty much fine as written. It's basically described as a metal tube, and if they realize what it is, then they're free to poke at it and have some fun with it. But I don't think you have to think about it too hard. It's just kind of a throwback to one of those old AD&D themes where like I think it's, what is it, Greyhawk, that just has like it's got wizards and giants and demons, but like randomly you'll just find an alien spaceship somewhere. And I don't think I'd include an alien spaceship in Crystal Strahd, but I think like just a random musket is fine.
Okay. There was a question, how do you all handle travel, especially like backtracking stuff and travel times?
I doubled all distances in Barovia, so all roads take twice as long to get places. I largely, when we were starting, I used random encounters, so they weren't so random. I purposely chose random encounters that I think would make for dramatic or interesting narrative elements, either as ways to reveal the history or inhabitants or lore of Barovia, or as ways to foreshadow certain elements, such as having the scarecrows harass the PCs while they were escorting the wine, to foreshadow Baba Lysaga and her her minions. Over time, as my players got higher level, then they basically committed wolf genocide. I very much dialed down the random encounters to the point where they basically never happen anymore, except in rare occasions. As far as the travel times themselves, I'm working, one of my projects right now on the side is I'm working on a spreadsheet tool that will let you put in any a start point and a destination, and it'll just automatically calculate the distance in miles from one place to the next, the amount of time it will take going at a normal pace, a slow pace, and a fast pace. And you can, put in factors like multiplying it, like double the distance of hexes or quadruple the distance of hexes, things such as that nature. And it'll also include some elements that, helping you randomly generate random encounters for those journeys. So that's something I'm working on the side, and I'm hoping to publish it sometime in the next few weeks when I have a chance, but it'll probably come after the Castle Ravenloft guide, to be honest.
Yeah, on my end, I I run travel times much less statistically, much less like realistically, I suppose. My first note was just always make sure, at least between the major locations, the village, Valaki, and not Berez, Kresk, to always have at least one night where they're forced to have a night of camping on the road. Because in my experience with D&D, camp time is one of the main times that player characters actually bond. It's when their personal backstory comes up. It's when they try to RP with each other and say, hey, why did you lie about this to whom, and blah, 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 and why do you carry that weird vial that's like full of something of a mysterious substance? Like, that's when camp time, when there's no other NPCs to worry about, is generally when player characters talk about themselves and form bonds. And because of the fast pace and the very tiny nature of the as-written Barovia, there wasn't time for that interaction. So I was like, I'm just going to fudge this. I'm going to stretch the time so they will have that time. And even if they don't use it, even if like, oh, okay, we camp and go to sleep and wake up, that's fine. At least they had the opportunity to RP. And I think that helped overall. In the later half of the campaign, when of course they'd already kind of gotten to know each other and they were on a mission, we were able to kind of fast forward through that. Like, okay, it takes you 2 days here, you camp, you do this, you camp, and then you're there. So it was more like a breath, and then they were at the next location. But that was second half. But I think it really just helped with PC relations, which is the primary reason why I lengthened everything in general. But yeah, it was kind of just a guesstimation at that point. Okay, it's going to take you at least a day, if not 2 days, to get from one location to the next. It also helped that I didn't show them the real map with the hexagons on it until much later in the campaign. My players were able to get a hand-drawn map that was, not great with distances. They were able to get that from Valaki. So until then, they didn't even have a map. And then once they had that, it was all just guesswork. So travel times were just basically what I told them that would be, and I think it really helped. So I didn't really have players that asked.
I will absolutely throw in a hell yeah to not giving your players a map. Like, as written, I think the only places my players could get a map would be, I think that Rickton might have one. I think Esmeralda has one in her wagon. I could be mistaken though. And like, I guess I could probably have Fiona or Vargas give them one if like they were in good favor, or if they tried to steal one.
Yes, that's what they did. Like, they stole it from the Baron in my game. They found a map in his study, and they were like, "This is mine now," and they stole it. I was like, "Good for you guys."
Outstanding. Yeah, I think like something very important is like, the map spoils a lot of features, a lot of areas, and it takes away a lot of the mystery of the Peruvian roads and wilderness. Like, something I'm really interested in doing in my Twice Bitten stream, obligatory plug, is without a map, when your players get to the fork in the road between Argentvastolt and the Old Swallow Road, they don't know which way is the correct way because there is no signpost. So what do? And with a map, a lot of that wilderness exploration, intrigue, and confusion goes away, and you lose a lot of those elements. So I think it's very important to make Barovia feel very unfamiliar and very unfriendly, at least for the first third or so of the campaign, and then maybe let them find a hand-drawn map that certainly won't show them the location of the Amber Temple, but it'll at least let them know how you get from Kresnik to Valaki if you want to.
Yes, exactly.
All right, bring in the next one.
Okay, there was one question for me. What does my name mean? I basically inherited this name from my father, and it's in Lithuanian, and means it's a diminutive form of a person who is forgetful and absent-minded.
It doesn't seem like you at all.
No. But yeah, I inherited it from my father. There was a question, how do y'all deal with character death, especially in the early levels?
Oof, poorly for me. I get as attached to player characters as my players get attached to their characters. I get really attached to them. So when they die, I'm like, no, and I'm like devastated. Which is why I do a lot of like work on trying to make the encounters fair and not like overwhelming. So every encounter that they have is at least somehow winnable, or at least like, maybe the Strahd, for instance, will TPK them and then leave them and not actually kill them. So if a player character dies, it's not my fault at that point, which really sounds sad, but I am heartbroken whenever it happens. And re-rolling a character is always very, very difficult. Trying to move them into and get that family dynamic back with the party. I'm lucky to say that the one time that I did have a character in my campaign actually die in Curse of Strahd, they actually were a warlock and they had a deal with a dark power, so that actually sort of saved their life. Backhandedly, it cost them a lot more as well. I had some sort of give and take system, so it was kind of like a backhanded way for me to kind of avoid player character death, which is probably not the healthiest thing for a DM to do, but it felt okay at the time, and it ended up going over really well in the long run, as that player slowly succumbed to dark powers and had to get by that by the Amber Temple, or get over that connection. So that ended up being really interesting, but it's really hard. I don't like character death. It hurts.
I think for me, character death is something I try to. I mean, obviously, as DMs, we all know that you juggle things behind the screen to make sure that, if there's death that happens when it's dramatic. I try to avoid having, NPCs target unconscious players unless the NPC is, something like a ghoul or a ghast that wants to, seize and devour prey. Or if it's an intelligent NPC like Rahadin or one of the Revenants who has previously seen that player be revived by healing magic and realizes, hey, if I leave that guy down for a single round, he's just going to pop back up with healing word next turn. And, then they will coup de grace the PC with some critical melee hits. But generally speaking, obviously, character kills are things that can happen. In the first quarter of the campaign, anytime before Balaki, I tend to just make use of the Adventurers League Dark Gifts approach, where if someone dies, they are approached by a manifestation of a dark power that says, accept my dark gift, and I'll bring you back to life, because the dark powers want to mess with things, and they think it's entertaining, and the player lives a bit of a cursed life afterward, which makes things more interesting. One thing that I did try once my first campaign got to Balaki and our rogue was killed by Ezek, I had the rogue come back as a ghost, and part of their mission from then on was to find a way to resurrect that player's personage using the corpse they left behind, while the player could still accompany them using the ghost. So after they hit level 4 or 5 or so, I think that's a more interesting way of doing it. Such that because there are a lot of opportunities. You can find Van Richten in his scroll of Raised Dead. If he's your ally, you can voyage to the abbot, because I'm sure that there's someone in Valaki or Crescent who can tell there are rumors that the abbot is Strahd, but there's also rumors that he can raise people from the dead. So I'm sure it's pretty easy to point them there as a side quest. And then once they get to the end game, like by now your cleric should have Revivify or Raised Dead, your paladin should have Revivify. The abbot should be on speed dial if they've made friends with him. So once they get to like level 8, I just stop worrying about it, because if you die, like literally, I had the most anticlimactic deaths like 5 sessions ago, where my players were camping in Van Richten's tower. Van Richten and Aragorn found them. They had been commissioned to kill them and steal their shit, because Strahd was finally done with taking whatever they were doing. Rahadin literally did not even wait for someone to pop back up, because they knew that all the PCs had some form of magical healing. So as soon as the sorcerer went down, he slit his throat. As soon as the cleric went down, he plunged a sword into his chest. The paladin literally had to yeet himself out of the window of Van Richten's tower to revivify both of them, using all of their diamonds in order to do so, which means that they now have 0 resurrection available for Strahd. Like, it wasn't dramatic, but like, you're level 10, man the fuck up and deal with it. So that's my approach once you get high enough level, because at that point, it's not me, it's Strahd, and Strahd wants you dead, you're going to be dead, deal with it.
Yeah, the kid gloves come off by end of the game. It's scary. Strahd's a scary dude.
Yeah. And like, Strahd doesn't have to show up personally. Rahadin and Aragorn alone can be very dangerous threats. But Strahd himself is also very dangerous. If my players were ever stupid enough to, camp outside and Strahd had declared war on them, Strahd was going to show up, charm whoever's on watch, cast a fly spell at both of them, take them away, approximately 3 miles into the middle of the woods, and then kill them. And then just leave the body there. He might drop it off if he wanted to, but he'd probably just take it back with him, turn it into a vampire spawn, and drop it off in the morning. Guess what? Strahd's done playing. He's going to fucking kill you. Be prepared. And that's why part of the reason, tangentially, why I love using Esmeralda, because if a party's not prepared, Esmeralda can very helpfully be that wake-up call saying, hey, we should probably sleep behind a threshold tonight, or else Strahd will fucking kill us. So at that point, the player should have allies that can advise them of not doing stupid things, which is, again, a little reason why I feel comfortable taking the gloves off at that point.
Okay. There was also a question recently and quite a bit before on how do you deal with specific timelines, such as Valaki or Winter Splinter. Do you keep them rigid, or do you adjust them for your players?
I adjust them for my players. I personally view that if I'm running a game, whether it's Curse of Strahd or anything, that while of course there should be actions for or consequences for their actions and everything, the end result of the whole D&D experience is that I'm helping tell a story through my players, or I'm helping tell a story for them as well. So yes, it's possible for them to miss things and for them to mess up, and there should always be consequences for actions, or like blatant disregard of a plot hook, for instance. That should have consequences. But if it's not their fault and they're doing the best that they can, I do personally try to hold off certain situations so that they have the chance to experience them. So like Valaki, that was one of my main mistakes for Valaki, was I did everything much more by the book than I should have. It all went too quickly. They didn't have the chance to do anything, and they ended up in that big mess that is Valaki. And my players felt a little bit like overwhelmed, a little bit cheated, I think, just because they didn't have the time to explore the way that they wanted to, which is why I wrote a bunch more in my guides. But because of that, I have learned to sort of pace myself. Say, give them this, or try to find a reason. Okay, if this is happening, then maybe, I don't know, Lady Walker is going to have a quiet night in this time instead of going out and doing some shenanigans. Because in the end, this is a story for my players, and I want them to have fun. I want them to feel like they are, heroes in this world, or at least coming up as heroes, whether they're strong or not. And have the chance to experience what I've created. I don't want like a whole location just abandoned because I ran things too quickly for them. So it is a bit, I do base most of my play style based on how fast the characters are moving through the world.
Yeah, I think like for me, I think I come down to the is it fair? Has it been foreshadowed? So for example, if the players get to Valaki and they learn that the Festival of the Blazing Sun is happening in 3 days and they leave and they don't come back, like it's going to happen without them because the world moves on. And I think that's very important for the verisimilitude of the players, like the immersion, knowing that if you're not there, the world still exists. People are still doing things. They're still living their lives. Like whenever my players come back to Valaki, like I always enjoy the fact that like it's basically a totally different geopolitical situation. So that they always feel like there's something new to learn, something new to explore. And if you're not there, you might miss out. But maybe you don't want to be there in the case of Valaki. So in my first campaign, my players cleared the Wizard of Wine's winery. They said, "Good job, team. Let's go back to Valaki." And as per the book, I said, okay, Winter Splinter comes and demolishes it, and the Mardikovs are homeless. And they came back and discovered that, and they were crestfallen. I mean, on the one hand, it let me run a super fun arc that let them rescue Muriel and Adrian from like Yester Hill, which pointed them toward Baba Saga and Berez, and it was a lot of fun. But in retrospect, it wasn't very fair of me that I never foreshadowed that Yesterhill was something they should be worried about. So if I've had Davian explicitly say, the druids are up to something, go check out Yesterhill and make sure you get the gem back, then sure, because Davian's Scottish in my game for some reason. But
Nice.
If I hadn't done that, it wouldn't feel fair, and I don't think I would do it because the world does move. And I don't want them to feel, trapped as, my second campaign did in Valaki, where they felt there was so much going on they just couldn't escape. And that's something you have to adjust. But on the contrary, I want them to be able to miss things if they ignore something I have laid clearly before them. As long as I've been fair, I don't have a problem with having things happen off screen.
Yes, exactly. Yes, agreed. That if you've done your effort as the DM to say, hey, here's a thing that might need to be done, there's a little bit like an NPC is expressing urgency and then they ignore it, then yes, consequences have to happen. But if you accidentally just fail to mention anything, or you mention, oh yeah, Yesterhill's that way, and then you just kind of accidentally forget because you're a DM and you have a lot on your plate, maybe it's not as fair at that point, or at least that's my sort of take on it. It's just as long as you've done your due diligence to sort of give the hooks where they are and then let them decide and then let the consequences play as they may.
All right. We're looking to finish up in roughly 15 minutes. So I suppose I have like 3 more questions that I want you to answer. One would be, do you have any insight in making the end game fun. Basically, how do you balance Strahd's intelligence and cruelty with player fun?
Right. I'm currently running this right now, so I hope you don't mind if I take it. I think, well, first off, don't use the rules as written stat block. Please do not. It is extremely binary. Either Strahd is going to die in 2 rounds, or he's going to make your player suffer for approximately 34 rounds. So please do not use the rules as written stat block. It is incredibly fragile. The phasing is overpowered, and just a lot of it is unfun. And I take a lot of issues with how it was designed in the module. There's any number of Strahd revisions and all these I prefer my own, but take your pick, except for the one that shall not be named. Beyond just the mechanical, obviously you have to get a good sense of what your players are interested in, what they care about, and what they're willing to take. My players explicitly said we are okay with dark things happening. We're okay with dark content, gory content, things that we may not be comfortable with. And so, on the one hand, I wanted to make sure that I could pull on their heartstrings and really force them into a position where they felt like they had to take Strahd down, where they really hated him. And to that end, I had him kidnap the children that they cared about. The cleric had a whole arc where he did his best to quest to level up to learn greater restoration. He finally learned and came back and healed Stella Voctor, and he was so proud and so happy. And guess what? Strahd found out, and now he knows that the cleric has a soft spot for Stella Voctor. And he comes back and he says, "Hey, Lady Voctor, your daughter is very impressive. She should hang out with me in Castle Ravenloft." And Lady Voctor says, "No, I don't think so." And Strahd just charms him and takes her, which is horrifying. But the cleric finds out, and the cleric swears to Lady Voctor, "I will get your daughter back." And I think it's a very important part of pushing the ending along, because the finale, when it comes to that, you have to raise the stakes. It can't just be, "Oh, we've got these items, let's go kill the bad guy." It cannot just be the end of a line of tracks that you've obediently followed, and now you're at the end of the line. You just take your end of semester final and you're home free for summer vacation. I don't think that's what Curse of Strahd can or should be. I think that what it needs to be is you need to ramp it up. You need to raise the stakes. You need to make clear that Strahd has been playing with you. He's been attacking you. Now he's being cruel to you. You need to make it clear, either you win or you die. Either you win or those that you love will die and they will suffer, and Barovia will not be free. And it is hurtful. And again, you need to make sure that your party can take it, because not all players play games, even those who play Curse of Strahd, play it for these kinds of crises or these kinds of stresses. A lot of players play D&D as an form of escapism. A lot of players might have, stress or anxiety, or might be very uncomfortable with these topics. So make sure you know your players very well. But for my purposes, I felt that my players would be accustomed to or able to adapt to this and would enjoy this style of storytelling more. So yes, I had Strahd, almost kill Lancelot with a firebolt. Yes, I had Strahd kidnap Brahmin Bray Mardukut. Yes, I had Strahd, basically fuck up everything and make it clear that if you do not win, people you love will suffer. And I think that's one very effective way of ramping up the stakes. But again, you have to account for your players, what they will and won't enjoy, and make sure that it's both severe enough to be a climax, but gentle and empathetic enough that you're not overwhelming the people you're trying to entertain.
All right, thanks for the answer, Mandy. Do you have anything to add?
I think that was very well said, actually. Good job, Dragna. I guess if anything to add, I'm not sure about the original question, but whether it was like balancing darkness versus like absolute destruction. Going on more of the actual battle side, remember that Strahd in and of himself is very, very strong, and yes, he can fight like he's Bamfisel. But do remember that he's a character and that he has flaws, and those flaws, that pride that he has, is going to lead him to make mistakes, even in the final battle. While he might not make stupid mistakes, he can do something out of pride, and then that might give your players an edge. So if there's like a balancing act of, hey, this is my super powerful boss battle, that he's unbeatable in every way, remember that he is still a person, and those mistakes might actually help in the end if you're having trouble consolidating, hey, my player seems still too weak even at level 12 or 13 or whatever they might be. So on a statistical standpoint, that might be worth considering. But otherwise, everything you said was great.
Thank you. And I think just to add off something that you mentioned, Strahd is definitely a flawed character. And just because he is evil or abusive does not mean that he cannot be in turn manipulated through his flaws and his foibles. That's specifically why we chose to include Irina in Strahd Poseidonite when we ran it as a community, because Strahd, I mean, one way to, just mechanically view Strahd is that he's very, very unlikely to cast an area of effect spell that hits Irina, because whether you believe he genuinely loves her or not, which I don't believe he does, but nonetheless, he may believe that he does, or he may believe that he owns her in some way, and so will be loath to, as icky as it makes me feel to say this, he'll be loath to damage her, mechanically and narratively. And so there are certain ways to manipulate Strahd, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people underrate the Tome of Strahd, and why I think a big issue with Curse of Strahd is that a lot of people overshare on Strahd's lore. That works in certain narrative-heavy and role-play-heavy campaigns, but it also trivializes the Tome of Strahd, which I think is fine, and there are ways to ramp that up to counteract that effect. But the Tome of Strahd does something that neither the Sun Sword nor the Holy Symbol let you do, which is, in the final battle, predict and manipulate what Strahd is going to do. You can understand his pride, his arrogance, his weaknesses, what his preferences are, where his aggression is from. Honestly, if you can read it and taunt him about Sergei, rules as written, he probably would not be moved about it. But in certain narrative aspects where Strahd is still very much an emotional creature, you could certainly put that to good use. So don't forget that Strahd is a fucking genius. He's fucking brilliant. He's got 20 intelligence. If you put him just in a vacuum on a battlefield, he'll probably destroy your PCs. But he has his own challenges. First off, he's an intelligent undead, which means he wants to preserve his own life. He's looking for a successor, not a killer. Second, Strahd has priorities. He wants to torture Van Richten. He wants to, turn Irina. He wants to find a successor. So he has priorities that he wants to accomplish, and your players can manipulate him by offering opportunities to fulfill those objectives. So always keep in mind that Strahd is not just a stat block. He is also a person with his own weaknesses, his own flaws, and his own priorities. And to beat him, your players should heavily be encouraged to make use of those. Even if that just means, tying Irina to your shield and walking around Castle Ravenloft, as long as she says it's okay.
Okay.
Oh my god, that's a method.
Thank you very much. To really quickly answer one question that was perpetually asked by Sony regarding the Strahd Torment competition, that's certainly something in the plans along with the event schedule. I have two questions left for the stream. One would be, I'm sure Dragna knows, Mandy might not, but this, I think, like almost half a year ago now, Chris Perkins tweeted that if you like Curse of Strahd, there's something coming in 2020 that you'll certainly enjoy. And what are your thoughts on that?
God, I have no idea. I wish I knew what he was talking about.
I've heard a couple of things, like a couple of rumors about that of what it might be. None of which I'm not really, sure about. But if it is like a gothic-y sort of horror situation, I know that I will be very interested in it. I will have to say that most recently, I'm actually haven't seen very many of the campaign books, except for quick glances. Curse of Strahd is by far the one that I know the best. But I have read the, what's it called? Oh my gosh. Waterdeep. I've read the Waterdeep campaign, which actually seemed to be pretty well put together, especially like by comparison. Curse of Strahd is very all over the place, very open-ended, a lot of plot holes and sort of dead ends. Waterdeep, the first one, seemed to kind of, I'm sorry, was it? Yeah, Waterdeep. Ah, my gosh, my brain. Seemed to kind of be a little bit more consolidating for new players and new DMs as well. So if it's written in that end, maybe it won't need as much editing, which would be amazing. I mean, good for them, but I will definitely be interested in that campaign, whatever it might be, if it has the same sort of gothic-y tone.
Awesome. I suppose I could pitch in from my perspective. I really hope it's a setting book rather than an adventure or collection of adventures, like Ghost of Saltmarsh, for example, mostly for personal reasons, because a setting guide would be much easier to implement under our current circumstances, and I'm not really ready to take on another module project, which if it's another gothic horror adventure, I'll likely do. So yeah, I just really hope it's a setting book.
Cool. What we got next?
Yeah, so one last question, which would be...
we can do 2 more, right?
We can do 2 more? Okay. So what do you want to do? I suppose there was one question, whether you have included any other Ravenloft content in your guides from older editions, except for the Thanes?
Nope.
I don't think so. I mean, I had to do a lot of research to go find about like dark powers and stuff and the demi-planes. Like, for some reason that was very hidden for me, and I was a new player and a new DM at the time, so I was like had to dig quite a bit to find it. But that I suppose I already did include what I did find and expanded upon. So I suppose that's that.
Yeah, that one's kind of at the beginning. 2 more.
2 more. Okay. One is, how do you feel about a massive scale battle at the end of Curse of Strahd, instead of having it just be like the party plus the ally, and making it like a very big fight?
I almost ran that. I came I expected my players to do that. They had amassed sort of an army. It was the people of Vallaki were done, or whoever was left of Vallaki, and I actually had like a whole giant mob thing marching up to the gates of Ravenloft, and they all sort of turned to the party and were like, "You're going to be our generals, lead us into battle." And I was going to have a sort of risk rolling dice for like, you know, major battles, but then my party took it a whole new way. They were like, "We need to protect these people, keep them here and stall. We'll go deal with Strahd in the meantime." And then it just turned into this one-on-one battle. But I actually did plan for that, and I actually spoke to Dragna about it because I was so worried about it. I didn't know what to do. But I had basically Risk, the board game, if you've heard of it or know of it. I feel like many people do, where it's like you have like different squads that are each represented by a dice, and the dice are counted against each other. And it was going to be sort of a weird battle mini game within and of itself. Groups of vampires versus the mobs. And all the while, the players are trying to get through it all and find Strahd and take him down. So that could have been very cool. It's just my players wanted to keep the people safe and not see any more deaths, so they went in there to take care of it all themselves.
Yep. So I think I have kind of, you know, I'm of 2 minds about this. I think, first off, I have not run this before. I think the closest I've come is when I ran the wedding at the conclusion of my first campaign. My players had an excellent Shrek-style entrance where they burst through the stained glass windows to the instrumental version of "I Need a Hero," and screamed "I object." It was great. And of course, as per the Wedding at Ravenloft DM's Guild content, which is very good, you should look it up. I recommend it. It was basically full of sort of NPCs from around Barovia. So, you know, Ismark joined the battle, Aragorn joined the battle, you know, against the PCs, of course. The Kreskovs would have joined if they'd been asked, and the players actually knew who the hell they were. That's close as I've probably been, but ultimately came down to the players versus Strahd for most of the battle. I think in general, I'm not overly a fan. For 2 reasons. The first being just logistically speaking, there's already been a mass rebellion. It was last year and they lost, which means that you know, last year they had Mordenkainen. And, you know, at this point, anyone who would have been willing to go into battle is probably long since dead, because those kinds of calling events have probably, you know, that probably took a substantial chunk of Barovia's population, at least the ones who were willing to stand up and rebel openly. Beyond that, you also run into the issue, I think, where Ravenloft isn't actually that well populated, and it's certainly not by powerful things. If you look at the random encounters, you know, I presume that, you know, it probably has, you know, anywhere from, I think we did the math, we estimated that Strahd probably has around like 50 or 60 vampire spawn at his disposal, which is a bunch, but like, if you look at the population of the castle and the random chance of them encountering them, it's probably more accurate to say that Strahd has anywhere between, you know, 5 and 20 vampire spawn in the castle at any one time, not including, you know, named encounters. So I don't think that really merits, you know, a full thing, especially given that so many of the residents of the castle are so hurt by sunlight, which means that, you know, the players can pretty much easily take them down on their own. And Ravenloft at its core is not really a battle of, you know, huge armies, you know, clashing. It's, you know, also, you know, it's more of a battle of attrition. And in that situation, you know, usually in media and film, you have that situation where someone says, "You continue on, player characters, I'll hold them off, and like that's great and fine. But in Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft, and especially given the way that 5e's mechanics work, unless Ismark can suddenly take up the entirety of a 10-foot hallway, he can't really hold anyone off. So I don't really feel like there's a way to make that work mechanically very well unless you run into some sort of weird skill challenge. And also, I just feel like a kind of, if you have that many people, unless there's some kind of countdown or time limit, there's not really any incentive to have that, we'll hold them off moment. You might as well just, take all those people and, beat every encounter 20 versus 4. Like my players in my first campaign, they did some dumb shit to let them bring some revenants to Ravenloft. And I punished them for it because, you shouldn't bring people who don't want you to kill Strahd into Strahd's castle when you're trying to kill Strahd. But, when they were fighting the Dragon Wormlings, it was, 6 revenants, the players taking pot shots from the back, and the revenants absolutely destroyed those Dragon Wormlings. So, it wasn't really much of a contest. And, there's no reason why they can't just bring their friends along with them for the entirety of the infiltration into Ravenloft. So I don't think it's very feasible unless you hugely ramp up the number of encounters in Ravenloft, hugely boost Strahd's difficulty, and make it, almost necessary that they have an army to take him on. Which, if that floats your boat, then go for it. But I didn't really see the appeal personally because I wanted a more personal battle.
Very good. One last question. I thought it would be nice to finish up our discussion. Was a question.
Sorry, I just saw someone in chat say CR27 starts the answer. No.
No.
I know you're targeting me. You're intentionally doing this to me. Absolutely not. Do not. That's all I have to say on the matter.
No CR27. All right. One last question, and we go. That was actually from the subreddit thread. So, where do you see the sub going in the future, especially after your guys are finished?
Oh gosh, I'm not sure. Like I said, I have plans on finishing my last posts on fleshing out Curse of Strahd. I don't expect much more to be added to it after that. I know that people have suggestions about things that I might have missed here and there. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll end up taking like, oh, I forgot about this post and put that in, but that will be just randomly and much later. Beyond that, like I said, I've been running my own homebrew campaign. And I'm more of a content creator, I suppose, and a moderator, so I don't really have much control about that. I have thought about moving on to another campaign book. I've looked at Tomb of Annihilation before. I'm not sure if I might try to flesh that out and make an actual RPing treatment of that instead. But Curse of Strahd is always, will always be like my first legitimate campaign and kind of my baby, and fleshing out will always be my babe as well. But I'm not sure where we're going to go in the future from there.
Well, we'll never let you leave anyway, so.
Oh, never. I know. I'm here now forever.
Yeah. Regarding me, I think, Curse of Strahd definitely seems to be the most long-lived of the campaigns. I mean, Storm King's Thunder used to be all the rage. Now I keep seeing people direct, new DMs to, Dragon Heist or occasionally Avernus. So it seems like, there's this kind of wheel of things, turning forward and people growing interested in new adventures as the old ones kind of drop off. I certainly don't see any recommendations of Tyranny of Dragons. Not that I think it deserved it necessarily. But Strahd definitely has staying power. I think it retains that almost, I think it's the top voted module by the community. And I can see it for good reason because it's so strong about, the sandbox, the very strong characters. So I think it has a lot of staying power unless Wizards releases a module that can, actively compete with it. There's a reason why, so many people keep running it multiple times because there are just so many ways to explore and develop and grow as a storyteller, as a DM through this adventure. And I think it'll be around for the long haul. So my goal overall is, we've kind of discussed it a bit, is I want to make the subreddit a compendium of information so that, when people arrive, they have instant pipeline to new information, to people who can help, to guides that can contribute and advance their idea of what the module is. So that, when someone comes in asking, how the hell do I run Vallaki? There is a very easy answer. I want to make it so that the community has, a compendium of all the resources that people could want, so that, we don't need to ask for, artwork, or someone doesn't have to, go digging through Pinterest for 15 minutes trying to find good, Fiona or Stella or Victor art. My goal is for the subreddit to be a place where this content is here, it is easily available, it is accessible, and there continues to be this active, supportive, helpful community through the Discord and the subreddit itself, where people can just have answers to their questions, can suggest and debate new ideas. and continue to find the help and support that hopefully people have been able to find over the past 2 years.
I would probably second Dragna's thoughts, and also just probably mention that the subreddit and the Discord community has been a wonderful addition to my daily life, and it's been a wonderful community just in general, not only for D&D and not only for Curse of Strahd. So seeing it thrive is definitely something I want to see in the future.
Absolutely. Like seriously, you guys are incredible. I don't think I've ever encountered a friendlier, more supportive, more constructive community. The Discord is fantastic. The subreddit is fantastic. Like, I still can't believe that we had like 120 people watching the stream at one point. And hopefully we can just keep growing the community and making it a better place to attend.
Yeah. So with that, I think we'll finish up today's stream.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry to all those people that asked questions and we didn't have the time to answer them. They were either too long or too specific. And if you have any questions, I honestly encourage you to either post in the subreddit or come to the Discord, and you'll most likely get answers there. But yeah, thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, and one last shout out to everyone for coming, and thanks so much, and all of your support toward our work. It's been monumental and unbelievable, so thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. We love you all.
Bye.